G'day, Council of 13, Man-Thing AOS coach here. How good was that? What a cracking intro. And this is the long overdue Skaven video that I was meant to do, but anyone who followed the channel knows that I got hit with COVID just as General's Handbook and the Skaven book dropped. So I haven't actually had a great opportunity to do a video first. But I thought, why don't I ask the Council of 13 for one of their best representatives, who's someone who might stab me in the back, give me, slide under the table a bit of warpstone and share with me how they're thinking about Skaven. And I couldn't think of one of the better nominations than Joel Graham, a cracking player in Australia, but also you are the Interim Australian Master and also ranked number 3rd in the TSN World Ranking Players of 2022. So I've got a great champion who's going to help us look at this at a very competitive level. And as always, if you got your favorite thing and you love Doom Wheels, if we don't like Doom Wheels, it's not saying don't run them. You do you. But we're going to look at this very competitively. Think about if I was going to go to a tournament, what would I pick? But before we get into that, Joel, g'day, welcome. Say hello to the internet.
G'day, everyone. G'day, Coach. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And if people don't know who you are a great player. You've been dominating Australian scene. You've been doing incredibly well. Who are you for the folks at home?
Been playing Warhammer for 2 or 3 years now. I think 2019. I did something I don't recommend to anybody. My first ever game of Warhammer was at a 2-day tournament, so I couldn't have dived in any deeper. But obviously I enjoyed it because I stuck around, and sort of each tournament went by, got better and better, and now I pretty handy. So very happy to be here.
No, and I'll be coming to your tournament soon. You're actually going to be running your first tournament, which I'm very excited about. But that's not why you're here. I'm not trying to get bonus points or a soft run at the tournament. We're actually going to be meeting up in 2 days' time, actually, at a 1-day event. And I know you're going to get the Skaven out. I've got my Gits. But I want to get into this book because when I look at the Skaven book, and I'd love your overview, and I'm going to have a whole bunch of questions, and we're going to go through the allegiance abilities and try to unpack it to the best we can without making this stream like 10 hours. But when I look at this book, it's quite a complicated book, Joel. And I'm sure you might have some similar feelings. And if I was a new player picking this up, or someone who really liked the rats, they picked up the Echoes of Doom, and like, how on earth do I construct this faction? There's so much internal synergy. There's so many different clans, and it's very unlike other battle tomes where I've got my Sylvaneth book and I want to be Winterleaf, and the Winterleaf keyword goes onto all my troops, and I just build around Winterleaf. You throw those rules out the window with Skaven. And I think that's exciting, but it's also quite challenging because how on earth do I deconstruct it? So hopefully in this discussion, we're going to deconstruct it. But why Skaven, Joel? Why on earth are you picking Skaven?
I guess it's the kind of player I am. I'm sure, or if you're not familiar, MTG has Timmy, Johnny, Spike. I'm very much a Johnny player with bit of the other two, but if you see a lot of the lists and that sort of thing that I've run, there's always power pairings or little combos that when they pull off, they can turn the tide of the game. So just the kind of list and the kind of army I like to play. It also helps that Skaven's probably my second favorite army in the game. Nothing will ever top Slaves. Can't beat a classic bad man, but I just love the idea of humanoid rats. It's very unique and different. A lot of the sculpts, they're quite dated, but a lot of them I still think have a lot of character, and a lot of the newer ones are just absolutely outstanding. Look, think about things, like the Bombardier that came out. Like, imagine if we got all new sculpts like that, right? Like, just fantastic. And I love the lore. I'm not one for the goofy sort of silly stuff, but the more serious part of the lore, it can get pretty dark and twisted. I really enjoy that part of it.
Lore question for you, because someone actually mentioned this in my Discord literally this morning, and I thought, oh, it's a really good question. Here we go. Here's something that maybe the people in the chat can share with me. Do you reckon there's anybody, like any Chaos Warriors, that worship the Great Horn Rat? Now we have an ascension to the Pantheon, do you think that maybe there's some worshippers of Skaven in the Mortals of Chaos? Something to ponder too. I think it's an interesting lore piece, but or maybe a conversion piece. I don't know.
Ooh, tempting.
I don't know. It's just interesting. Like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, now they're on the Pantheon. Maybe there is like a little clan that kind of devotes to the Great Horn Rat.
If my thought would be that I'm not sure if they'd be aware of it, because Skaven, you know, they're pretty hidden. A lot of people in the Mortal Realm still think they're like a folk tale, or they're not real. So, but maybe, who knows? Maybe there's a short story.
Nailed it. Maybe there's a ratty Warcry warband coming. I think that would be so good. But let's talk about what's actually here, because you're right. Like Skaven, and I was kind of a little bit surprised that there wasn't new sculpts, because and I'm not going to harp on this because every other probably creator and everyone with an opinion probably feels the same way, that there is some old sculpts in Skaven. When I started Warhammer Fantasy Battles back in the 90s, some of the sculpts are still the ones that I purchased back in the day. Like I remember getting the Mordheim box where it's like Empire Militia versus Skaven, I think the Night Runners. And like literally they're the same sculpt. So I'm not going to kind of beat on that. I know that kind of hurts, but hopefully new models will come in a second wave at some point, or who knows, maybe 3D printers are going to go burr at the moment. Skaven's a great book. I really enjoyed it. What was your thoughts on the new book? Did you like it? Do you think they got a nerf? Were they like, is it same but different?
It's a really odd one. Originally I was looking at the Sylvaneth because they're a very similar book in the, not in the way they play, but it's very much a sort of a combo and power pair based book as well. So I was quite interested in that. And then I had a more serious look at the Skaven after I checked out the Sylvaneth, and it's very much the same. They definitely got a power boost. I wouldn't call them S tier or anything, but they're definitely capable now. They're not in the bottom anymore. They're definitely, I'd say, mid to upper tier army, and you can absolutely win tournaments with them. But a lot of people have said, the book's phoned in or they've rushed it. And it's an interesting take. I'm not sure if I agree, but when you look at a lot of the rules, like, for example, there's a ton of rules that are still within. They're not wholly within. It feels like they just missed that. And yeah, it's kind of strange. It's weird. I'm not sure about it, but I'm not complaining because I'm more than happy to play with those rules. I'll take advantage.
I was surprised to see a lot of rerolls in the book still, because they've kind of like, as I've been reviewing all the new battle tomes, like you can see rerolls are being cut left, right, and center. But when you go through this, like there's still a bunch of rerolls, which I thought was fascinating in itself. And I think for me, when I look at Skaven, I got really excited because even though I'm not a Skaven player, I'm a Skaven, enthusiast. I'm waiting for Doom Wheels to get really good. I was trying to be a potato and run a whole bunch of like biker mice from Mars, like just run all the Doom Wheels.
It's so close.
It's so close. But when I look at this, I get really excited because it reminds me a lot of when I first picked up Cities of Sigmar for the first time. And when Cities came out, Cities didn't shake up the meta. Cities evolved with the meta. So as it kind of has gone along, Cities has always been good and powerful, but they never raced to the top and became oppressive. A lot of new battle tomes, when they come out, they rise to the top of the meta pretty quickly, but then they also fade. I think Skaven, to me, is one of those ones they're going to have a slow burn because there's so much internal synergy. And then kind of you're going to see like the penny drop, and you're going to find the list that kind of just click, and they'll do really well, and they'll adapt.
I love your comparison with Cities. It's very similar. I mean, the book's got 40 war scrolls, so it's one of the bigger books. There's no obvious list. You can just go like, bang, yep, that's the list. Let's go. It's going to take. It's not an easy army to collect. It's not cheap. Like I said, a lot of old sculpts, a lot of out of stock stuff for the good stuff now. But I agree. Yeah, it'll be sort of simmering underneath. The win rate won't look great, but it's a really good army, and it's good that it's not a super broken army that just jumps straight to the top. Like nobody wants that. So no, I'm quite happy with that.
I will just call it really quickly. Killy McGee. This video, by the way, just for anyone, if you're watching this in the future, we are recording this pre-FAQ. So there was a comment, for example, around like Thankful losing its spells. I don't think that is intentional. And I think as soon as an FAQ happens, Thankful will get the spell lore back. But just be mindful when we listen to this, things might change with an FAQ or a kind of a clarification. But yeah, I think that doesn't make sense. Like every other unique hero within their clan or their faction gained their spell lore. Doesn't make any sense that Thankful doesn't have his.
I mean, he's still got the Greyseer keyword as well for the Greyseer spell lore. The previous fact for the old book gave him access to the spell lore, so it'll happen. Just wait for the fact, I guess.
So if you were trying to explain to me, like I got really excited, let's say for example, I'm someone at our FLGS and I see the Echoes of Doom battle box and I see the battletome and I'm excited about rat things. How would you explain to me their play style? How do they work? Are they a shooting army? Are they a combat army? Are they like just lots of rats? Like what's their play style?
Honestly, rats can go pretty much any play style. It's such a large and varied book. You can, whatever takes your fancy, whatever is your flavor that you enjoy, you can go that way. Obviously, there's lots of different clans, and you're not forced into each one. So if you like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, you're not just a vanilla fan. You like chocolate and vanilla. Well, you can have a bit of each. The best way to play, obviously, there'll be a better list and a better way to play will emerge. But I think almost everything in the book is a viable way to play. The way I like to play them, I'm not really much of a shooting person. You can obviously do that with things like Storm Fiends. Lightning cannons, they're still good. I rate Jazales, even though a lot of people seem to not like them so much, but I think they definitely got play. But I like to play just combos and power pairs. I think I've said that a few times now, but the list I'm playing at the moment is a decent Alpha Strike list. So that's very different from what I normally play, so I'm giving that a go. But you can play it any way you like. You can play board control, you can play shooting, you can play melee. The one build you probably can't do is like an anvil, push it to the middle and try and last the game type play. They've got big damage. They've got big damage potential if you pull off the combos and the pairings correctly. But yeah, they won't last long in a fight. So, but the trade is you can put lots of bodies on the board, so you can keep sending wave after wave. So, yeah.
I might actually agree with the chat here. I don't know, like when I looked at the book, I don't think everything is viable. I know you didn't say literally everything, but when I look at the different clans, I was not a huge fan of like Mulder. Maybe it's just like the Timmy and me that just ran to Eschen and Scryer and Master Clan. And I was just like, Verminous, Mulder. But who knows? I'm sure you're going to tell me how wrong I am and how there's some secret list tech with, I don't know, Hell Pit Abominations.
I think you'll see a lot of lists that will have parts of Molder in it for specific combos that I'm sure I'll mention at some point. So you might not go for a full Molder list, but parts of it are very, very, very good. So
I think part of this as well, and probably the point that I'd like to reinforce that you've mentioned, is that there is a lot of internal synergy. Unlike Sylvaneth, where I can just run those flying bugs and just run forward, and I'll do really well. Skaven really requires a lot of internal synergy. It's going to require power pairs or power trios to make your faction really good, which is going to be like a competitive player's dream, right? We get to create some really powerful combinations, and discovering those combinations are fantastic. But on paper, when you look at it, you're like, this war score's okay. But when you supercharge it with factions or spells or abilities and artifacts, you start seeing the real potential. So, and that's kind of what we're going to go through at this point. Is there anything else you want to kind of share at this point? Because I think what was going to make the most sense is going to be looking at the different abilities and trying to unpack it.
Yeah, I guess it's a Shrek book. There's lots of layers to it, right? So, like you said, you see something, well, that's crap. But then when you flick the page a few more pages and see something else, you're like, oh, hang on, if I put that with that. So, yeah, it's not an easy book. It's probably one of the more complex books in the game, I'd say. So, not the most beginner friendly, but if you can start simple and build from there. So it's not all is lost.
And by the way, like if you are a new person, don't take what Joel just said and go, oh my gosh, I made a wrong decision. Just know that there's going to be games where it's going to be a little bit harder. You don't quite know why you're losing, but it'll kind of all click in. Killy McGee wants to know what your thoughts are on Rattlings. Been using Rattling Alpha Strikes.
I'm very frustrated with the Rattlings because they went from, I think, a 16% chance to kill themselves to about a 70%. So you really only get one shot with them, one opportunity. So I'm not the biggest fan, but you can definitely use them. They're definitely still good, right? They'll come up, they'll nuke something, 2 damage shots with the spark. Yeah, still okay, but I don't want to. You basically use them once and they die, which is a little bit sad, I guess.
Nice segue. I've got the Dark Prince telling us a bit of lore. Actually asked the question about mortal followers of Skaven. The Dark Prince saying that it's been mentioned in Black Library shorts that the poor folks that live off vice of the gutters of the free cities pray to the Eschen aspect. Okay, I like it.
Wow. Hell yeah.
There you go. There you go. All right, let's get into the rules and let's try to understand this new book. And again, we're just going to look at our perspective. And I think there's one thing I'll just call out really early on is that there is no one way to play Skaven. A lot of this is going to be based on the units that you want to play with. And that adds a lot of context, much like cities. So without further ado, you've got a couple of abilities. First off, you've got lead from the back, and that is subtract 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by melee weapons if the target of a friendly Skaven hero that's not a monster is within 3 inches of a Skaven unit that has 3 or more models. So Joel, what I want from you at this particular point is, how do you look at the role? Is this rule something that you will build around? Is it something that you consider in your list design? How do you look at it as a competitive player?
I just see it as an added bonus. It's very rarely going to come up. Units are very squishy, so if your hero's in combat anyway, it's probably dead. Obviously, the next rule can help with that if they stuff up their activations. They don't activate the units in the right order. But it's one of those things. If you're paying attention, just put 3 dudes within 3 inches of the hero, and it might make a difference. But it's okay. It's nice to have, but it's not something you're going to build your list around. That's for sure.
Do you find that your Skaven heroes lead from the front?
Some heroes, definitely not the little support ones. They're too important. They've got to hide in the back for as long as they can.
Okay, so that's the point that I wanted there, is that traditionally you won't want your heroes at the front. There will be some exceptions to the rules, but in most cases, your heroes are sitting at the back behind units, buffing, supporting. They're not tanky enough to get into the front and carve up like a vampire lord on zombie dragon.
And you'll find a lot of lists will have 4 minimum. I normally run 6 heroes every list, and 3 or 4 of those are squishy little support heroes, and they're so important to the army. So yeah, you got to keep those guys safe.
They got low wound count. They don't have wards traditionally. Their armor saves aren't that great. There are some ways to get them wards, and there are bodyguard abilities through this book. But traditionally, much like Gloomspite gets, your heroes are pretty squishy generally. But there are exceptions, like every rule. The other one being Scurry Away, and that's in the combat phase. When you pick a Skaven hero that doesn't have a mount, how many models have a mount in Skaven?
Just the one, Thankwell.
Okay, so every hero other than Thankwell will get this ability, and that is basically they can retreat as opposed to fight in the combat phase. So again, Joel, what's your thoughts?
Actually, I think the Grace, the Screaming Bell and the Plague Furnace might be mounts as well. I'm not 100%, but this rule is amazing, incredible. Sometimes it can be hard to use. Obviously, you can't retreat over models, so having access to fly, there's a couple of ways to get access to that, can be incredible, but it really puts pressure on your opponent to make the right decisions. This book is really good at forcing a lot of hard decisions, and you can really punish your opponent if they make the wrong one. So if they activate in the wrong place first, you just retreat from combat and your hero's safe for another turn. So it's an amazing rule. Yep, very flavorful too.
And on top of that as well, you could steal an objective off it. If your hero wasn't on an objective, you could scurry away to score on the objective and potentially deny your opponent or cap it yourself. So there's a lot of play as well, on top of just protecting that hero to fight another day in another combat round. Could be a great way as well to be able to, if you are at the bottom of the turn and you retreat out of combat, you win the priority roll, you could then do some healing, where previously if you stayed in combat, you wouldn't be able to. So and Plastic Crack, thank you for the clarification. I assume you're talking about the Grey Seer on Screaming Bell. They are counting as mounts, assuming that's what you're referring to. Yeah. Then finally, you've got Strength in Numbers, which is add 1 to the range of melee weapons used by friendly Skaven units for every 10 models that are attacking. So you get a maximum of an additional 3 inches. Now, What does that? How does that work? And how does that work with the Thond? I was going to say Thondia. We're not in Thondia. We're in Galette. With the bonds of battle, where you get that kind of like that extra shenanigans with fighting. So how does that work, or what does it mean to you?
Another amazing rule. It pretty much means if you're running a blob of stuff, you can get some pretty insane buffs like laid on top that we'll see as we go through things like Storm Vermin. Their reach change from 2 to 1 inch in this book, but this rule means they're on 25 mils still. That whole blob, as long as it's still a big size, all of them will reach in. It's amazing. The new Galette rule, you can choose to use it, so you don't have to. So obviously, as Skaven player, you're going to pick this one because it's better.
Yeah, and like like when I look at the Galette rule, and by the way, like we're only in Galette for potentially 6 months. So when this rule stops at December 2022 or wherever it works out to be, you will continue to get this benefit, which is going to be great as well. So this will allow you to take really what type of units do you think would kind of benefit from this? Are we talking just like clan rats and storm vermin, or are you thinking other units potentially as well?
Your big ones are going to be, I think, Storm Vermin and Plague Monks. Clan Rats are great, but you can get them to do okay damage, but still not great. But the things you're really going to look to use this rule with are Plague Monks and Storm Vermin, I think. Yeah.
I'm being told, by the way, you look like Mr. Beast. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you might want to come back onto YouTube and check out Joel, who looks like Mr. Beast.
I wish I was Mr. Beast. I'll take some of that money. My God.
I wish you
I get that all the time, Mr. Beast.
I'd get a massive follower count boost by getting that exposure. A couple of other things generically that I've pulled out is that I've pulled out one command trait. And the reason I pulled this out is you've got more than one command trait, folks, but there's one that is universal to everybody. And what you'll see is that the rest of this book is then broken up by the clans, by Molder, Eschen, Verminous, Scryer, Pestilence, Master Clan, and everything else is kind of broken up. So depending on the types of heroes and depending on how you kind of construct your force, will depend on what you'll get access to. But you've got this command trait, the Devious Adversary, where in the combat phase, it is a command trait, so you've got to choose it for your general. If this general fights within 3 inches of an enemy unit that hasn't fought in the phase, add 2 to the attack characteristics of the general's melee weapons until the end of the phase. Is this a command trait that you would consider, or are there other ones we're about to find out?
Oh, definitely. This is definitely one of the stronger ones. It's so cool that they've given you one that everything can use, because especially like Master Clan, there's not a whole lot. I think they're pretty average. So to have one here that everything can take, and it's a fun one too. Like 2 extra attacks, buff something up, send it in a few extra attacks. If it's your turn, you can fight first. There's a couple of items in the book that give you that. The big unit you're probably looking to use this on is the Warbringer, because you can make that guy's probably the biggest hammer in the army if you buff him up properly, or one of. And he's got 2 weapon profiles compared to most other heroes, one that can use this. So he's the one you'd be looking at using this, I think.
Would you be giving this to a smaller hero like a Bombardier? I've forgotten names right now. Like the little minor characters, would you be putting this command trait on a small Arch Warlock or a Grey Seer, or is this more reserved for like a something a bit more killy?
Yeah, your Vermin Lord's the way you'd see it. The fun option is to go with an Arch Warlock and with your sparks and your other and your artifact, you can, and your flaming weapon spell, for example, you can get him as a fun little sort of fun little missile you can send in. But I wouldn't say it's a super competitive option, but it's still good and good fun too. So that's an Arch Warlock would be your option for a little character, I think. But most other heroes are just support characters, so probably not.
Could be a clan Eschen, like Deathmaster might work well maybe.
It's just
when you compare it to a Vermin Lord, Lord, like nothing compares. Like it's like pushing shit uphill. You're like, look, yeah, Deathmaster could go all right, but when you then add it to a Vermin Lord, and because it's everybody, it means any type of Vermin Lord can access it, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's the issue. Obviously, they hit a lot harder, so you're going to get more value from it.
As Killy McGee saying, if you're relying on a Bombardier in melee, you've probably already lost. That's very well said. That's not.
He's scurrying away. He's not fighting.
Exactly right. You don't want those heroes in characters because they'll die to a stiff breeze. But one of the other considerations is something that's quite unique. Actually, it kind of took me a few seconds to realize this because traditionally, we were talking Sylvaneth before, which is obviously the book that came with this book at the same time. Is that Sylvaneth would unlock Battle Line, for example, and much like most other factions, you play one sub faction, you run Harvest Boon, you get X units as Battle Line, and that's traditional to every book. Skaven breaks the rules here. So your clan rats and your storm vermin are always going to be battle line in Skaven, which is great, consistent. But for every Skaven hero, whether it's Scryer, Eschen, Pestilence, or Molder, they will unlock different types of battle lines. So if you have a clan Scryer hero, for every one clan Scryer hero, you can unlock a unit of Acolytes and a unit or a unit of Storm Fiends. The same is true with Eschen, with Gutter Runners or Night Runners, the Plague Censer Bearers and the Plague Monks if you are taking a Pestilence hero, and then Rat Ogres and Giant Rats for every Molder hero. So a lot to unpack here. What do you like? What do you don't like? Does this change your hero composition? Are you going to be picking particular heroes to unlock some of these as battle line? Or, especially with Gletchian veterans at the moment with this season, maybe should I not pick one of those heroes so they don't gain the GV keyword?
I think the most important thing to point out first is the word "can" in there. You can choose to make a battle line, which I think helps make Skaven one of the better armies in the Galatian veterans meta or season, because you choose what you make battle line. If you don't want it to be battle line, I don't want to. You have the option, which I think is it's amazing. A lot of armies are, when they take a certain hero or sub-allegiance, like you said, this becomes battle line. You don't have a choice. This one, it's all your choice. So the only things that are battle line, apart from Clan Rats and Storm Vermin, I think things you've chosen to be. So you can really push and play if you want to make something a veteran, try and get the counts as 3 battalion, or you might not want to make it a veteran, so the bounty hunters can't kill it as easy. That's all your choice, and choice is always good. So I really like that part of it. Clan Rats these days, 100 points for what they come down 30 points to 100. They're always amazing. They're incredible. I always like to have them in lists if I can. And everything else, it's good to have the choice, because obviously, if you make a battle line, you can reinforce it 2 times instead of once. So you might want that bigger blob on things like Plague Monks to get to 30, to make those buffs you're putting on them more effective on the one unit. It's a bit sad we didn't get extra reinforcement points. That's a bit of a soft spot, I guess, with this book. Everyone was hoping and thinking it would be a thing, but sometimes you've got to be careful. But I've honestly found in most of my lists, I'm not even using all 4. So it hasn't become an issue for me. But I think it's the main thing for me is the choice.
Yeah, there's some incredible choice. And I think, again, unlike other books, what's really cool is that you can mix and match. Like, most other sub-factions, I take that sub-faction and I'm locked out of other battle line options. And the reason you might want to take battle line is you want to double reinforce. You want to move a unit of Plague Censer Bearers, for example. They come in blocks of 5. So if you want to block a 15 and really maximize the boost and maybe get more out of your rally or whatever it might be, maybe you really do want to take Plague Censer Bearers as battle line, and that's going to mean that you want to get yourself a Pestilence hero. At least you unlock one. Do you think...
The other thing as well that I like is you've got Storm Fiends and Rat Ogres that won't become GV. So if you don't want to take Clan Rats or Storm Vermin, you want to get your 3 battle line, you've got those 2 guys. Rat Ogres are a fair bit cheaper, so that can be an option as well to avoid taking any GV if that's what you want to do.
How many wounds has a Rat Ogre got?
6.
Oh shit!
Yep.
I thought they were like 4. I was thinking they were like ogres, where they were like 4. Oh, cool. Okay, so you can completely avoid GVs just by taking Rat Ogres and Storm Friends as your battle line.
They used to be a 4, but then you could put an Eschen, like a Master Molder, like you could put one of their mutations on them. But in the new book, they got rid of the Rat Ogre mutations and sort of gave that one to them. So I'll take it.
Yeah, nice. And I've just had a look. Yeah, absolutely. They're 6 wounds apiece. So if you want to avoid Glettian veterans and you want to just not playing that game completely and just play all bounty hunters and no GVs, there's absolutely a build there. Or you could go completely minimum. Are wolf rats legal? No, I think they're legend, much like a lot of other things that were in the Skaven book. I think we were talking earlier, one of the old vermin lords that were for Forge World only. Was it the Warp?
The
Something.
Claw Lord on Brood Horror. Poor fella. Such a beautiful model.
RIP. Look, I think there's a lot of great options here. I think there's some interesting pieces that you can do. I think for me, and whether it's a battle line option or not, I think there's some really interesting combinations you can do. Like, for example, I love gutter runners and night runners, and even just taking one unit to be able to deep strike into terrain, or being able to, is it gutter runners get the pre-game move, night runners, or no, it's the other way around. Night runners at the pre-game move, gutter runners come in from a terrain piece from reserve. I think that flexibility is great when you add the Gnaw hole, plus being able to like push back people. Because one thing I've noticed in this particular General's Handbook is people being really aggressive. Like back in the old General's Handbook, you had the battle tactic where it's like run 3 idiots and you'd score your battle tactic. Now there's none of those free ones, so people are just like running up the board and trying to alpha you as quick as possible.
Apart from against all odds is I guess the new ferocious advance, but a lot of times you want to try and save that for later in the game, so it kind of forces you. So I'm really enjoying. I've only been playing with GHB battle tactics because my tournament in September is doing that, so I wanted to get a bit of a feel for it and see if it was an enjoyable play experience, the right thing to do, and I've been enjoying that. But you're right, it does force you to be a bit more aggressive, which I think is a good thing.
Which works in your favor too, because you've got the Gnaw holes to be able to teleport around the board, and they've slightly changed as well. In addition to some of the other shenanigans you got access to.
I think Skaven, either Sylvaneth or Skaven, the two books at the same time, have the most shenanigans about teleporting and jumping around the board. It's pretty crazy. I'm looking forward to playing that matchup against a Sylvaneth player and to stuff jumping all over the board nonstop. It'd be crazy.
From a battle line perspective, do you like all of these options? Are these ones that you would consider, depending on your build, right? Like if I want to kind of maximize pestilence, would you be bringing in plague censer bearers and plague monks? Would you be double reinforcing your plague monks? Or do you think going like solo pestilence and being maybe a bit more of a mixed force might get a bit of bang for your buck when it comes to Skaven?
Well, like you mentioned before, you're not forced to go down a certain clan anymore to unlock this battle line. So you can, for example, like you said, you can go down Pestilence, but you can instill and get the bonuses for going down Pestilence, but still include things like Clan Rats or Stormvermin if you want a bodyguard for one of your, your little plague priests. Some of these options I definitely would look at battle line if I was, specializing in that just to get the double reinforce. Some units don't need to be reinforced. I like to run my sensor bearers in 5s because they kill what you want to kill with them in a group of 5. They don't need to be bigger. So it kind of depends on the unit and what you're trying to do with them. It's sort of that kind of book. What you do and what you run and how you run them really depends on what you're trying to do and what the rest of your list looks like. But some of these you definitely would. The Storm Fiends, you want them in a big blob because the way you play Storm Fiends is to buff them up with sparks and spells, so they're far more efficient. So you're definitely going to want to run them in a 6 or a 9, potentially. Other things like gutter runners, night runners, sensor bearers. I'd be running things like that just in MSU units personally. So it's options depending on what clan takes your fancy or what units are taking your fancy.
And what's really cool, and it's a bit of a spoiler, is that when we get to the grand strategies, there are some that are really rewarding you to have mixed clans, right? It's Master Clan and Mulder, Master Clan and Scryer. So you'll see some of these like mixed forces actually will play well in some of the battle tactics and the grand strategies. I think for me, look, the clan rats for 100 points at the moment for 20 wounds, I probably wouldn't reinforce them at the moment. Just because Inspiring Presence has become really hard for Skaven. You lost your buffs to you used to have bravery boosts back in the day. The Grey Seer and Screaming Bell used to give like a battle shock immunity. Yes, there is a Vermin Lord, I think it is, that can give you like a bravery 10 aura. But in most cases, the days of running hordes of rats, clan rats, is probably over, and you're probably running at least a whole bunch of smaller unit troops in addition to clan rats.
Clan rats are one of the, I think, best units in the book if you use them correctly. Like you said, you do have access to some bravery things. The Warp Seer has a wholly within 13-10 bravery. The Plague Furnace still gives the Battleshot community. The Screaming Bell lost it for some reason, but the Plague Furnace kept it, so go figure. But I love clan rats in MSUs of 20. They can do so much for you. I run mine in Expert Conquerors. It was hilarious the other day when a couple of rats took an objective off Karazai, so that was good times. But the Clan Rats War Scroll has +2 to run on it, or their flag gives you retreat and charge. So I've had many times when a few rats have lived, they've retreated away, charged something that's not going to kill them. They bring D3 back in Battle Shock now as well, so if you don't wipe them, they'll slowly refill. They can do so many tasks for you, put them in multiple layers of screens. They're very important to protect your squishy heroes. You need screens in this army, I think, in most of your builds. They're amazing. I love them, especially for 100 points now. That's nuts.
Yeah, and I'm not saying not to run clan rats. They do not take that from what I'm saying. But back in the day, you would see blocks of 40, blocks of 60, and you'd see multiple of them on the table. There was a time where running a whole bunch of clan rats and then maybe having some acolytes or some Jezzails behind the line, or protecting some of your your artillery pieces, that was a viable strategy. And as the Dark Prince is also reminding us, in the current season, in this Galette season of Galette, they are a battle line. They are veterans, which means if anyone takes bounty hunters, that will do an extra 1 wound to them for every attack. So they will die pretty quickly.
20 were dying to most things regardless, especially those units you're putting in bounty hunters, they were already dying. So it's not, I haven't found it in my games to be a big deal.
And they're 100 points. They're 100 points for 20 wounds, I think is the key, right? That's so cheap compared to other factions.
Oh yeah. You don't care if they die, right?
No, which makes them great screens. I think that's the point. What I'm saying though is, like, would you put in 60 and 40? I'd really want to have like a really good strategy, having a couple of CP up my sleeve, or at least having the triumph to have an extra battle shock immunity. Maybe have some artillery teams or something that's going to make the most of a block of 40 to 60 clan rats if I went down that route.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise it. Me personally, I love having my Skaven list as high drops as possible, because I like to see what my opponent, with this army, I like to see what my opponent's doing and sort of counter deploy and position myself in response to what they're doing. So again, having them in, instead of having a 60 and a 40, having 5 20s, that's an extra 3 drops. So I like that. I'm happy to do that.
Like I said, if I wanted a block of 40 or 60, if I had like this mad crazy plan, I'd want to make the most of it. But yes, you're right. I probably would run multiple small units. That's what MSU is, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about. It's just those minimum size units. Anyway, we've talked too long about battle line options. You do you. Find the thing that works for you. If you want to build around certain types of builds, you'll find something for you. Where the magic really happens here, folks, is when we get into the sub factions or the clans, and it is very different with Skaven. Unlike other books, if you are an Age of Sigmar player already and you play other factions, you have your allegiance, which would be Skaven, and then normally you'd pick some type of sub allegiance. Here, you don't have to do that. It's all around the composition of the units, but there are incentives. There are incentives where if you have 3 heroes from the clan. So for example, you take 3 master clan heroes, you will get additional boosts. How am I going, Joel?
No, good. The things I'd like to point out for master, I'll just talk about master clan.
Cool, let's do it. Because like this is where you can get analysis paralysis here. It's like, right, there's so much rules here, and I thought for simplicity, by the way, this book is laid out horribly. I think when you look at this book, it's just like rules central. Like, it is not easy to read. It's just a blot of blur. So what we've done is we've broken it up by clan. Joel, there are many different clans. Talk to me about master clan, and what do you like from the master clan?
If I didn't care about my book, I'd screenshot all your screenshots and stick them over the top of my book, because that's how it should be done. Makes much more sense. So things with Master Clan, what I like to point out is the bodyguard is obviously amazing, because your support heroes sort of are what power up your army a lot of times. The bodyguard is not optional though; you have to do it. So be careful. Sometimes you might not want to kill whatever's in front of your hero. You might be more important for that to live at that time. So if you put it within 3, you have to use the bodyguard. So something to keep in mind.
So when we talk about bodyguard, so skilled manipulators, you roll a dice before you allocate a wound or a mortal wound to a friendly Master Clan hero. That's not a monster. Now, basically, it allows you to, basically on a 3-up, you pass the mortal wound to the unit instead of the hero. Is that right?
Yep.
Cool.
So it didn't say you can. If it's within you, you have to do it.
Oh, so you're forced to do it.
Yeah.
Now, if you have 3 Master Clan heroes or more, you get a enhanced feature, which is always 3 claw steps ahead, which essentially allows you an extra 3-inch pilot. No, is that you can use this ability if you have 3 or more heroes.
This is one of the best rules in the book.
Yeah, sorry. This is. Sorry, I was thinking of something completely different. Yes. So basically, what happens here is you can use this ability if you got 3 or more Master Clan heroes. We know that already. After you pick a friendly Skaven unit for the first unit to run in the phase, and make the run roll, so you can't use the forward to victory command ability. You've got to actually make the roll. You can use that run roll for other Skaven units until the end of the phase. You then can do the same thing as well for charge rolls. So after you pick a friendly Skaven unit to attempt the charge, you can then essentially replace other Skaven units' charge with that roll. Yeah?
Yep. I'm with you.
This is so much. I'm reading on a really squinty screen, so I'm trying to do this the best as I can. And then there's an extra rule: is after you pick a friendly Skaven unit to fight first in the phase, it makes a pile-in. You can make pile-in moves for each other friendly Skaven unit on the battlefield that's within 3 inches of an enemy. It doesn't mean you can fight; it just means they can pile in. Cool. Okay, that's the crux of the rules. Joel, what the hell does that mean for the average player?
That's a lot. But it's worth learning, because this is one of the strongest rules in the book. One of the strongest rules in the game if you use it properly, I'd say. So 3 Master Clan heroes. So what I'm usually using is a Thankful and 2 Graces. There's a few. I think there's 5 or 6 of them. There's a few.
Lord Screech, Vermin King, the Vermin Lord Warpseer. They're all Master Clan.
Yep, the Screaming Bell, the Grace here on the Bell, and the Warp Nor Vermin Lord, the Forge World model. I'll have to wait and see what happens to that guy, but for the moment, he's still in the game and he's still a Master Clan, so we can use him.
Why is it powerful? Talk to me, why does this become powerful?
So I'd like to point out probably one of the most important parts of this rule is it doesn't say unmodified. It just says the run roll or the charge roll. So remember that for when we see some stuff later as we get through it. But there's a lot of units or abilities that add to run and charge rolls, and if you sequence your runs, your charges, and your pile-ins correctly, it can be pretty crazy, pretty mental. The one I'll point out now is a Master Molder buff. You can put it on a rat pack, so that's giant rats or rat ogres. They get +3 to run and charge. So basically, imagine this book has 2 teleports from spells. They have 3 gnaw holes that can all be teleported through. You come 9 away. You basically just need to roll a 6 on that rat ogre's charge, and everything that's teleported or 9 away has made their charge. That is incredible. Oh my god. Things like your clan rats get +2 to run on their war scroll. So you do a run roll with your clan rats first, your whole army gets +2 to its run and whatever the roll was. So there's things like that are worth remembering. It's pretty crazy. The pile-in one as well.
So Joel, just to break that down, pause for a second, right? So it's the start of my movement phase. I pick my clan rats first. I want them to run. I'm not going to use a CP to forward to victory. I'm going to roll that dice, and I roll a 4. Now, if there was no additional modifiers to add to that roll, it means that every other unit that I want to run could use that roll of 4 instead of rolling a dice. Now, if there's a bonus that you're talking about and they get +1, +2 to that roll, that becomes a 6. That means I could replace the other units with a 6. Now, assuming, again, this doesn't get changed and FAQ'd in the future, but just basically that's at the core of the mechanics is that the first unit that you run, you can then use that dice roll on other units.
Yeah, sorry. I'm keeping it quite complex there. Yeah, so if the rule says add to the roll, this is because it doesn't say unmodified in this rule. So usually rules in this game that don't want that to be included will have unmodified on it. So like unmodified 6s to hit, for example, it cancels out your +1 to hit to make it 5s. But in this case, they haven't put unmodified on it for whatever reason. It could get fact, but for the moment, we just have to assume it was intended. And we'll use our rules to the best that we can while it's available, right? So, yeah, you can do some pretty nutty things. Like I said, the +3 to charge is probably the big one. A lot of people jump straight to that, but there's a lot of other uses as well. So, for example...
Joel, can I just pause you on one more thing before we move off this point? It's a can, not must. So if you roll trash and you roll a 1, it doesn't mean every other run roll is a 1. It is a can. So you can opt to then roll the dice. So just know that if you roll that first poor roll, you're not forced to use the 1 or the 2. So I just wanted to call that point out before we move on.
Yeah, no, good point. You don't have to use it. Yeah, if you have a bad roll and it's not enough to get your other stuff, and you don't have to use that roll for your other characters or units. And the last part of the rule is the extra 3-inch pile in. People might look at this rule and think it doesn't really do a whole lot. You don't get to pile in and fight. But it's basically making a lot of your units have a 6-inch pile in. Not in the traditional sense, because obviously you can only scoot around the unit you're in combat with. But for example, I've had games where I've scooted 3 inches and an extra 3 inches has made me be able to reach units behind a screen or to the side of a screen that were further away from the unit that charged, and this makes me be able to reach them and kill the thing that I'd rather kill. So it does have a lot of use. I love this rule. The 3-inch pile in, obviously the charge one's probably the big one you're playing around, and you can build lists just around that. But the pile in one, don't write that off. I think it's pretty incredible as well.
It's cool. So in a nutshell, unless it gets FAQ'd in the future, that first roll for either run and or charge, it's both. You can use both. It's not one or the other. You can replace a dice roll on the subsequent run and charges, which is great, especially if a unit gets a boost of +1, +2, plus whatever for said run or charge, right? But you made some good points as well when it comes to the pile-in. The first one is that if you have a lot of units, let's say to block a 30 vermin lords, storm vermin. Imagine 30 vermin lords. If you have a unit of 30 storm vermin or 40 clan rats or whatever it might be, you could wrap around your opponent with that extra 3-inch pile-in essentially, and then you'd be denying your opponent moving around and getting into your juicy stuff, and you'd be able to get more attacks in, as you've already pointed out. Alternatively, as you've said, for those units that have larger ranges, again, the Vermin Lord is a good example. There's others like Storm Fiends and others that you might want to be thinking about. You can use that extra 3-inch pile-in to wrap around, get into a juicier target, as opposed to going through maybe a chaff screen that you don't really want to be, fighting with. Is that kind of the crux of that?
Yeah, and like you said, the one I forgot to mention is you can pile 3 away, so you can use that defensively as well. It might mean they get less of the unit in because you've pulled you guys further away, or they might not be able to get hit at all. So there is a lot to that rule once you really look at it. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, you might hit a charge and just touch, I don't know, the middle of the unit, but then with your pile-in, you can move towards the edge. You're right. Then you're kind of restricting how many models can fight against you in return. So yeah, you can use it offensively and defensively. I like it. There are 3 command traits and 3 artifacts that you can choose from. I'm not going to read word for word because we'll be here for 10 years going through every single combination. Do you have a favorite command trait and a favorite artifact from the Master Clan?
Yeah, Master Clan is pretty easy. There's really only one of each. I'd go Master of Magic, especially on your 2-cast, maybe 3-cast with Arcane Tome Wizards, because it's basically a better version of the generic one, because it's reroll all casts, dispels, and unbinds. The artifact I'm running in nearly every list is Skaven Brew. So unit within 3 inches, D3 mortal wounds, +1 attacks. It's not restricted at all, so you can put that on things like Thankful that has 3 attack profiles, or your Vermin Lords, things like that. So don't just think about it on your infantry blocks. It can be used a lot of different ways.
I agree with Master of Magic. I think definitely as a command trait, being able to reroll cast, dispelling, and unbinding is a really good command trait. The other one that I'm lukewarm and I don't mind is the Supreme Manipulator, which allows you to reroll the dice roll when you're trying to generate the CP. So if you're an army that if you find yourself really CP dependent, that one's not a bad one. I guess it depends on are you building around magic and how important is magic to you?
Yeah, there's this book has amazing command traits and artifacts. Like a lot of my lists I'm putting in double warlord or double command entourage to get access to them. So I think unfortunately Supreme Manipulator might be pushed out by some other ones, but it's definitely an option if you're spamming CP on certain things.
By the way, I agree with you. Master of Magic is definitely the strongest. But if you find yourself not using wizards or it's not important to your strategy, there's certainly other options up your sleeve. What about the artifacts? You've got the Narshard, the Narshard,
the Norshard, Skaven Brew, and the
Skaven Brew,
and the Staff of
Rightful Supremacy.
Yeah, so I want Skaven Brew is obviously the clear winner for me. Like I said, put that in most lists. The other one I might think about using is Staff of Rightful Supremacy. This one's really weirdly worded, so it's worth reading and rereading again. The endless spell has to be within 13 inches of the bearer. So he doesn't have to do the unbind, but he has to basically be within 13 inches of the endless spell himself. So it's kind of like the turtle in Ideneth. He's got to be within range of the unit for your Reavers to get, or Thralls get +1 to hit. It's kind of like that. He has to be near the endless spell. It's not if the dispel is within range of within 13 of him. So that can have its uses, especially in the Purple Sun meta. You might look at this at the moment.
You talked Skaven Brew as a strong one. Once per turn in your hero phase, you can pick one other friendly Skaven unit within 3 inches of the bearer. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, and you get to add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons on that unit. Who's a good recipient of Skaven Brew? What are the types of units that are good for Skaven Brew?
So your big horde infantry blocks that you buff into the 9s. So a big blob of 30 storm vermin. You can add +1 attacks onto those guys, so 30 extra attacks, which you can get to pretty decent random damage. Definitely goes on there, especially when you've got a spell. You've got 2 spells that fight on death, so piling in twice is again doubling up on that. Plague monks take it really well. I like to use it, especially on the first turn on Thankwall. Because he has three melee weapon profiles, so you triple dipping, I guess, getting 3 extra attacks. I think it's just on almost anything, but obviously the big infantry blocks will give you the best value from this one.
Yes, and as we already mentioned, the Grey Seer both on foot and Screaming Bell. Thankwall, but obviously Thankwall is a unique character, so it can't take an artifact. Screech, the Vermin King, Vermin Lord, Warpseer are all Master Clan type units. So if you're picking any of those, you're going to have at least some of the allegiance ability, as well as obviously accessing command traits and artifacts.
Another tip with Skaven Brew 2 is it's in the hero phase. So you take on a a Grey Seer, and he's got you can take Skid Elite from the lore, so he teleports himself within 3 inches of something and buffs it. So it can be pretty mobile if you chuck it on that guy.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some good commentary around who could access, have a Claw Lord to get extra attacks, or use it maybe to get that. And there's probably one call out as well with the Grey Seer and Screaming Bell, is that one of the big changes or the things that you lost the Battle Shock immunity, but you've gained now ability to summon a Vermin Lord, which is a bit risky. I think you're a bit overpriced in my opinion. I think I'd rather the Battle Shock immunity for a random chance of generating a free Vermin Lord. But if it goes off, boy oh boy, is that a good hero to add to your army?
It can it's an odd one, the Bell, because it relies on you taking damage to get closer to summoning the Vermin Lord, and better players will just see that it's not punchy at all. So Skaven Brew, it can be okay, but it doesn't do much on it, and it doesn't really do much else. Unfortunately, these days the when it rings the bell and does stuff, it's not very impactful anymore. So better players will just ignore the bell the whole game and just let it sit there, twiddling its thumbs. So can be good, but yeah, I don't like it personally.
It's that balance of having enough damage taken to the screaming bell to be able to summon the Vermin Lord, with a good dice roll, and not dying. I think it's that fine balance that it will be tough to kind of balance when you're playing. But at least it's a double caster again. I think it did lose it in Echoes, and that kind of came back. So good news there.
It's got +2 to cast as well. So and that goes down as it takes wounds, so that can be an incentive for your opponent to want to damage it as well. So I can you can make it work.
Is there anything else you'd mention with the Master Clan? I think overall, most armies, unless you go pure, one clan, will at least have some type of Master Clan in your build.
Yeah, you're going to want to take one, usually a Grey Seer, to get access to the Skid Elite, the teleport spell, and Death Frenzy, depending on your list, which is Fight on Death, which is amazing in this army. So yeah, most armies you'll see at least one. But if you'll see a lot of this also build towards getting access to the triple Master Clan hero for the always 3 claw steps ahead rule.
Yeah, they're definitely the always 3 claw steps ahead. I would be looking for three Master Clan heroes. It's just too good not to take up, and being able to guarantee a charge from a teleport from a Gnaw hole, and then being able to, like, if you get a good charge roll, you can guarantee yourself the charge from those central points. You're laughing.
Like you mentioned, this could change in its value if it changes to unmodified, but for the moment, it's really good.
Yeah, I'm calling that out in case someone listens to this 6 months later and it's been FAQ'd. But just at the moment, modifiers are all good, so you can modify to your heart's content. One of my favorites is the Clan Scryer. And my Storm friends. So not a lot's really changed here when it comes to the allegiance ability. If you were tapping into Clan Scryer in the past, you're already familiar with the Warpstone Spark, where you would get a bunch of tokens, and that would be random. It's now D3 tokens, and then you add 3 to that roll. And they're the sparks that you can use to either in your hero phase pick one Clan Scryer to reroll cast Dispelling and Unbinds. You can use it in the shooting phase to pick 3 different Clan Scryer units wholly within 13 of the hero, and you add 1 to the damage characteristic of those missile weapons, and or you've got in the combat phase, you can pick a Clan Scryer hero to fight, and if it uses the Warpstone Spark, you get +1 to hit and wound rolls on that hero to the end of the phase. At the end of the phase, for all 3 of them, you roll a dice, and a roll of a 1, they're going to take D3 mortal wounds. If you take 3 heroes, you then get to roll D6 and add the 3. So you could be up to 9 sparks throughout the game. Joel, thoughts on Warpstone Spark as a real focus on Clan Scryer?
It's been their rule for a long time. It's very flavorful. It's an awesome rule. The one change is obviously in line with AOS 3. The fighting in the combat phase has changed. Add 1 to hit and wound, which is fine. A lot of cases that's better than the rerolls. It's same as it always has been, which is great. I'm glad it didn't change. It's an awesome rule and good fun to use. Yeah, very flavorful.
You find I found traditionally it's usually the first 2 that you use, having your Arch Warlock being able to re-roll Unbinds, Dispels, and casting rolls. Being able to re-roll those have been great. And if you're tapping into your shooting, whether it's your Storm Fiends, if you're going to go into shooting Storm Fiends, your Acolytes, your Warp Throwers, all those types of things, getting the re-roll on shooting. And because it's generous, you can pick 3 units to be able to add the +1 to the damage. They're the ones that are most common. Would you agree, or do you think that maybe a unit of 6 Storm Friends with the +1 to hit, +1 to hit and +1 to wound is a good use?
Yes, Clan Scryer traditionally they've been, they've sort of relied on the spell more warp power, which is reroll hits and wounds and shooting. That's changed to add 1 to hit and wound, which is still good. Depends on the situation if it's worse or better now with the rerolls. And obviously you're going to add the +1 to damage. So you've relied on that pretty heavily. the hero phase reroll spell lets you reroll you more and more warp power, so it's giving you a good chance to get that off because it is a 7 still, I believe. So, not super reliable to get that. So it's nice to have access to the reroll, and then run them up next to your Storm Fiends, your Acolytes. Adding 1 damage to your Acolytes is amazing, and your Rattling Guns on your Storm Fiends. You can't use them on your Warp Lightning Cannons. Just remember that because it's not attack profile. It's a special ability at shooting attack.
Yes. And
your Jezzails, it's pretty risky. You're fishing for the 6 with mortal wounds, so I'm not sure you'd use it on your Jezzails, but it's I guess you would if you had the Sparks laying around it, but if you had other things in your army, like if you go on pure Scry with Acolytes and Storm Fiends, you'd probably rather use them on those units.
I mean, you do get to pick 3 different units for 1 spark. So if you happen to find yourself with a couple of shooting units, you might tap into that. So maybe 2 other burning questions before I move into command traits and artifacts is, and one will come from the chat. Do you think Warpstone Spark is enough to bring yourself 3 Scryer heroes into your list to go for the D6 as opposed to the D3?
I wouldn't. Mainly because having access to D6 is good, but it's a D6. You could roll the 1 on the D6. It's very swingy. If it made it, 2D3 or you start with 5 or 6 and then roll a D3 instead of just a flat 3, or if you got something you could rely on a little bit more to give you more sparks, maybe. But if you feel like you're you don't have enough sparks or you're running out, there's access to more of those through your command traits and artifacts. So and your Scry heroes, you really only need 1, 2 at most. You never want to take more because they're a support hero and they do the same thing. You can only cast more warp power once. So I wouldn't say there'd be many situations where you'd want to take more than 3 unless you're you love Clan Scryer, it's your baby, and you just want to run full Clan Scry. That's what you're going to do. So
that would be my point. If you were running the Warlock, the Bombardier, you want to run Storm Fiends, you want to run the Warp Lightning Cannon, Acolytes, Doom Wheels, Jezzails, like all those things that are very Scryer, absolutely do it. But if I was running like a mixed force, would I try to include 3 heroes just for the sake of the D6 instead of the D3? Probably not. And I agree with you. If that was 2D3 plus 3, that would be more of an incentive. But you're right. I could roll a 1 or a 2, and I took a bunch of heroes for the sake of taking a bunch of heroes, and probably not a good investment.
You can definitely use your points better elsewhere, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. The other question that came up from the chat coming from Lewis was, do you think Storm Fiends can be effective as a single group of 3? Because they are expensive. They are a big bunch of wounds. They're not Galettian veterans, so they're not going to be able to fight with the Bonds of Battle ability and get the extra range. Do you think keeping them in 6s, 3s, 9s, like what are your thoughts on 3s?
I personally wouldn't like it. I think 6 is a sweet spot. I think 9's a bit of an overcommitment. At least in this meta and the way the game's played these days. Obviously that used to be the list, but I think the game's a bit different and it's a bit too much in one unit at this point. I think there's definitely could be some lists where you've got a lot of points. Storm Fiends are probably almost the closest thing outside of the heroes to an anvil that we've got. So if you want something that can take a bit more of a hit, it's an option. They have an option to tunnel underground and pop up. So you might want to take a unit of 3 to have access to basically a deep strike or something like that. They're pretty good in bounty hunters. Their melee profile, it's not amazing, but it's not bad. Honestly, not bad. So an extra damage, and you just send them in the units you want to kill into the GVs. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's optimal, but it's definitely more than fun to do. Yeah, absolutely.
And you could use the rule that we just talked about with the Master Clan being able to get the extended or the really good charge, pop them through a Gnaw hole or through the teleport, and then if you get a good charge roll, then you could be pinning something from the backfield or from the side and just tying something up with a whole bunch of wounds. And they are tough to kill. They are, you got to put a lot of effort into taking down even just 3 Storm Fiends.
Absolutely, yeah, and like I said, they've got the Grinder Fist. I think it's the Grinder Fist on the War Scroll that give you access to their own deep strike. So, unit of 3 deep striking like that could be an option for sure.
Let's talk about your command traits again. You got 3 command traits, 3 artifacts. You got the Overseer of Destruction, Masterful Scavenger, and Deranged Inventor. Do you have a favorite artifact? I said command trait. Sorry, command trait.
If I was to pick one of these, I would probably pick Deranged Inventor, just to add one to your hit rolls for a unit. Saves your CP, which can be quite important in this army or a scry list because you want to save them for other things. I'm honestly not super impressed by any of the three. I'd probably be looking elsewhere for my command trait. Either the generic ones, something like a Master of Magic to reroll a cast to save your sparks to use in your shooting phase to buff up the damage. Sort of insulates you against that 1 or 2 roll on your D3 at the start. Things like that. That's where I'd be looking. I mean, if you're a the weapon team one is interesting, I guess.
The Overseer of Destruction.
Doom plays spicy, so you don't want to lose that before it gets to fight. So that's an option as well, I guess. But
see, Overseer of Destruction seems like it's something that I probably wouldn't take because I mean, one, Hidden's weapons team, I'm not a big fan of them at the moment. And with endless spells being really powerful, I think I'd rather be going for endless spells as opposed to those points on, let's say, a weapons team. But I guess my other question would be, with Masterful Scavenger adding 2 to the number of Warpstone sparks, would that be good enough to get myself a guaranteed? Like, is it good enough that we talked about, I could roll a 1 on a d6? If it's just like 3 + 1 + 2. Is that a good use of command trait to get my guarantee up, or do you think that it's a bit of an overkill?
Personally, I think it's an overkill in my experiences playing because usually the sparks are really they're amazing to have for the whole game, but they do their big impact in turn 1 and 2, and especially running a scry list, which is going to be heavy shooting. You usually know which way the game's going by that point, so they don't have as much impact having more in my experience. But if you're running a whole clan scry list and you wanted to have your Arc Warlock go in and try to punk things in combat, so you're using sparks in maybe all 3 phases, this is what I was saying before, rather than take the 3 heroes, buy these with your command trait or your artifact as well.
Yeah, like if you have a master plan and you know that you need a minimum of, I don't know, 5 Warpstone sparks to execute your plan, then it's a great use. But it could be a bit of an overkill, and you just need to be a bit more selective of where you use the Warpstone sparks. But and then there's always the risk as well. You roll that 1, and I've seen it plenty of times where wizards have killed themselves by using a Warpstone spark, rolling that 1, and then they roll 3, and they've already taken a couple of wounds chips from shooting or magic, and they pop themselves. So that's Scryer, right? High risk, high reward.
That's Clan Scryer. Overcharge that Doom Rocket.
What about artifacts? Do you have a favorite artifact? You've got 3 there. You've got Brass Orb, Vial of the Fulminator, and the Esoteric Warp Resonator.
Yeah, like I said, if you what I've seen in lists is I don't think we've mentioned it, but the Bombardier and the Arc Warlock lost the Engineer keyword, so only the actual Warlock Engineer now can buff your Warp Lightning cannons, and he's 5 wounds on a 5-up hero, and if you're running 2, 3, because the 1 Engineer can buff each cannon if there's many cannons that are within 3 inches of him. If you're running 2, 3, I don't know, if you're Crazy Man 4 Warp Lightning cannons, you need to make sure that guy stays alive. So you can use like Storm Vermin to bodyguard and things like that. But you can also give him same with the sparks. You give him the Esoteric Warp Resonator, and he gets the extra spark himself as well for his rerolls if he needs to use it. Or he can take the Vial of the Fulminator to give those lightning cannons an extra little bit of move.
The Brass Orb seems popular, and I know some of them have just been people posting about trying to one-shot Morathi off the board and taking her off the table, and then being able to kill the other Morathi, and people with their loopholes. But the Brass Orb generally seems popular on a 3-up, being able to remove that hero within 6 inches from the battlefield, and then they have to set them up again wholly within their territory and more than 9 from enemy units. What are your thoughts on Brass Orb if I'm thinking about, taking it? Because I can see Jonathan in the chat's called out and said, yep, I'm a fan of this one. I don't like the 3-up. Is that chance of failing?
The brass orb, it's an awesome, it's mad fun. It's one of the cooler artifacts I've seen. It's any unit, so you can send those 4-inch move dwarves back into the corner of the battle and say, take another 3 turns to get here, something like that. My issue with it is it's got to go on a really squishy hero. So the 3 clan scry heroes that can take it, one's 6 wounds on a 3 up, the other 2 are 5 wounds on a 5 up. You've got to get it within 6-inch. It's got to be in your hero phase, so you have to get it there, and then win the priority or survive a turn within 6 inches of the unit that you want to teleport, and then you got to roll the 3 up. So you might fail it after meeting all those really difficult conditions.
And it's not even, and it's at the start of the hero phase, so it's not like you can teleport and do some shenanigans, or use Lachlan the boatman to teleport me up the board, then throw my Pokemon ball, and kind of then there's a big sequence that it has to happen. But
there's too many conditions to make it viable, but it's one of those things. If you're going for a good time and you want to try and do something crazy, pull off this awesome combo, you go into a one day, you just want to take a bit of a fun list or a cool item that might give you an awesome moment in a game, absolutely go for it.
Oh yeah, like dragons run up at my face, or Maw Crusher comes at me, you throw your little brass orb at them and make them disappear. I think it's pretty neat.
Get in the Pokeball.
Cool. Anything else you'd mention on Clan Scryer?
I think Clan Scryer probably took a little step back in this book, which is a bit unfortunate. I think you'll see less of them, but they're definitely more than viable, especially if you can combo them with things like Gnaw Bomb, which I'm sure we'll see shortly. They're definitely still viable, but I think you'll be seeing less of them. Maybe because all the other stuff got better as well, and they didn't really improve. They stayed the same, or maybe got a little bit worse. So
I was going to ask, what made them go a little bit worse? Because their profiles, look, there were some improvements and some decreases in power levels and changes on rules on different war scrolls, and we're not going to be here until the cows come. If you want to see that type of in-depth analysis, I'd check out Warhammer Weekly, who broke down literally war scroll, but that was also a 4.5-hour show that I just don't have time to do 4.5 hours of each war scroll. Do you think it's because Scryer generally just got worse? Is it because the meta has evolved and adapted? Because we are in more of a we're less hero monsters and less 2-up armor saves than we were 6 months ago. Do you think it's that? And Clan Scryer had the mortal wounds to kind of chip through that, or is there something more that's happened that maybe makes them a little bit less appealing?
It's Stormfiends don't have as many of the targets that they want to hit. They sort of disappeared a little bit. Losing the reroll hits and wounds on the more warp power spell really hurts Stormfiends. The damage between 6, I think you lose 7, 8 damage than what you did before just from that spell change, which can be quite an impact. The Bombardier and the Arc Warlock losing the Engineer keyword, so you're forced to take Engineers. When you definitely want to take the other 2 if you could, that hurts as well. Just those little things I think make an impact. And it's not the best meta for them either, I'd say. The one unit that I really love in Scryer is the Acolytes. I'd definitely recommend looking at taking those. You don't even need to take a hero with them. Sparks are nice, but you don't have to take it, I don't think. They're pretty crazy on their own. That's the one unit I think got a bit of a glow up because they got an extra inch to their range. The one good thing for Scryer is because of the battle line and clans changes, you're not forced to go full Scryer. You can take to get your Stormfiends to 9 if that's what you want to do. You can take Clan Rats as battle line now. You don't have to take all Scryer Acolytes as battle line. So there is more options. I just think they're not one of the better builds in the book anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think just the meta shift at the moment just means that you don't need as many mortal wounds as you needed in the past, because we had a lot of save stacking, a lot of ultra elite forces. And look, it might change a little bit. I think it's still really good value. I think there's also been enough updates, especially in the Eschen range, and we'll talk about Eschen in a minute. I really like Eschen, and it's more than just the cool model of the new Death Master. There's some really interesting mechanics in Skaven, and I think there's more just variety. I think in the past it's been very Master Clan and Scryer. Now there's other incentives to take other things, and hell, even Pestilence. You're seeing a resurgence in Pestilence. I can see in the chat people are talking about Plague Sensor Bearers. They slap. You didn't really see them very often in the old book.
Oh, never. They were hot garbage. They were just worse plague monks, and now they're better plague monks. So yeah, it's funny how that changes. You'll see a lot more plague censer bearers for sure, and the plague priest. I love taking that guy because, especially with Heart of Fury floating around, I want to crack at getting rid of that thing.
Yeah. Like I played a tournament, like I played a little one dayer, and that's a completely different show. But yes, having a priest is very impactful. Speaking of the clan that I really like, it is Clan Eschen, and it's a bit more simplified here. You've got the ability of Master of Murder, which at the start of the first battle round, after determining who goes first, but before obviously the first turn begins, you can pick one enemy hero on the battlefield, and you get to add 1 to the hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Clan Eschen units that target that hero. If you have 3 heroes that have got the Clan Eschen keyword, you get to, add start of the 1 to the hit and wound roll. Oh, so if you just got one Eschen hero, it's just one. Sorry, have one Eschen hero. It means you can target one hero to get the +1 to hit, +1 to wound for that target that hero. If I have 3 or more Eschen heroes, it means
you get against all the heroes in their army. You get +1 to
every
hit
hero. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's pretty cool. Again, I think it's quite flavorful. A lot of the rules in this book, Skaven's been around for such a long time, and they've really, I think, built on the army plays how you think it would play. So it's basically like you've got your secret ninja organization, and they've taken a contract to put a hit out on a hero, and we're going to take this guy out. So I think it's awesome. It's a really cool rule, and who doesn't love a free add 1 to hit and wound roll? And I love that it's only against heroes. It's almost like the leader of the army, there's been a hit put out, or you go on behind enemy lines to take out the leader of the other army. You go in there and you get a little bonus against him.
Yeah, I like it. And there's a lot of mortal wounds that can get triggered through Clan Eschen, although they're unmodified 6s to hit. So you will get more attacks through. And if you're going to run Purple Sun for the extra rend, you might want to get the +1 to hit and +1 to wound. You are playing around with some interesting units. You've got the Vermin Lord Deceiver, the Death Master, the new warband, the Skittershank.
Slink Skitter Pack, which I'm in love with. Amazing. Yep.
Then you've also got the Gutter Runners and the Night Runners that would get the +1 to hit, +1 to wound. I'm being reminded by Bartik, friend of the channel, that Eschen's ability applies to both melee and range. So with the +1, yeah, cool. Okay. There you go.
Yes, it's again, I wouldn't build that. Probably the only 3 or more bonus I build towards is Master Clan. It'd be nice to have, but I wouldn't go out of my way to get 3 Eschen heroes for all heroes. Some armies only have 1 or 2. There's usually one that's the most important one, or that you're ever going to be able to get to. So I'd be more than happy with one. I wouldn't work really hard to get 3. If it happened that you took 3 and you got it, that's cool.
Cool. Sorry, I was just rereading what I've written, and just going back to what Bartik has mentioned, is that when you have 3 or more Clan Eschen heroes, the +1 to hit, +1 to wound on all enemy heroes is only in melee. While if you just have 1, it's for both shooting and it's not melee restrictive. So that was what Bartik was talking about. So interesting pickup. I think to your point as well, I probably wouldn't run 3 Clan Eschen heroes unless I was mostly running an Eschen force and I wanted multiple, Death Masters and, the Vermin Lord Deceiver and things like that.
I mean,
the boost is not that good.
Yeah, this was on my questions for FAQ because you're literally in some ways hurting yourself to go for 3 because then your Deceiver ranged attack now no longer hits on 2s and 2s. It's back to 3s and 3s, right? So
yeah. What about the command traits? It is what it is. Like, it's clear as day. You get +1 to hit, +1 to wound, whether it's in melee or in one hero or all heroes. I think we both agree that the ability is not strong enough that would force me to take 3 heroes to access it. If I happen to have 3 heroes, awesome, but I'm not going to go purposely build a force that wants to take advantage of this rule. What are the command traits? Where are you at with your command traits when it comes to Eschen?
I love 2 of these. probably one of my favorite in the book, and nearly every list I run is a Deceiver with incredible agility. So if you remember the scurry away rule earlier, if when a hero fights, it can retreat instead of fighting. You'll see here it gives you a general fly. So, and a Deceiver I think moves 14 inches. So if your Deceiver's in a combat and you don't want him to fight and die, well, now I can fly over whatever's surrounding him and live to fight another day. And then even after you've done that, you can do Finest Hour twice. So +1 to save twice a game, or +1 to wound when you're going for the kill. It's incredible. I absolutely love incredible agility. I think it's one of the best in the book. And Shadow Master's awesome. The Deceiver has this on his War Scroll already. If it's like Mirror Shield, more than 9 inches, you can't target him. Death Master, I think, is a bit too many points at the moment, but if it sees a drop and you start to use them, this could be handy on him as well. Make him so he can't be pinged away from long distance. The only way to kill him is in melee, so as long as you stay next to terrain.
I'm being reminded by the chat as well that if you take your Vermin Lord, so for example, the Deceiver, which is the Eschen Vermin Lord, it counts as 2 for your 3 hero choices. So between the Vermin Lord plus, whether it's the Slink, is it Slink or Slanks or whatever the
Slink. It's the Warp Seer gets counts as 2 for Master Clan. The Deceiver can count as 2 with this command trait here. I don't think it counts as 2 itself.
I'm just quickly bringing up the rule for that one. But if that's true, and I'm just quickly having a look, that's a great way to get to the 3 if you want to get the 3. Assuming that's right.
I mean, I'm running Slink and Deceiver in my list on the weekend, so it'd be nice to have an extra rule I didn't know I had.
Well, I'll check the tapes as we go along, but I think if that's possible, great. What about you? What about your? By the way, like getting a hero to fly is bloody hilarious. The incredible agility, like that's
amazing,
ridiculous.
Absolutely amazing.
What about your artifacts? Do you have a favorite artifact?
All 3 of these are cash money, honestly. Clan Eschen is my favorite clan in Skaven, so I'm very happy about this. Shadow Magnet Trinket. Here's the last piece of my combo. Once per battle, you get to strike first, and it's in the combat phase, not yours. So if you combine that with your incredible agility, you can fly over whatever's surrounded you, you fight first, and you run away. And their super kill unit, that is 600 points, 1,000 points, whatever it is, Archaon charged you. Too bad, I'll fight first and run away, and you've wasted your whole turn charging me and come at that unit. So it's Shadow Magnet Trinket is amazing in the right situation, game winning good. Gnaw Bomb's the other obvious one. Sorry, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to check the tapes, and I've just clarified that on the War Scroll for the Deceiver, it doesn't count as 2, but it's the Unrivaled Killer that gives us access. So it says there the general counts as 2 Clan Eschen heroes for the purposes of Master of Murder battle trait. So if you want to get access to the all heroes get the +1 hit, +1 a wound against them, you're going to have to take the command trait. It's not inherent to the Deceiver. Just want to clarify that one.
Yeah, it's unfortunately we didn't get the Sylvaneth treatment. Not all of our command traits and artifacts throughout the book are amazing, but there's enough good ones here to keep you very happy. The other one in here obviously is the Gnaw Bomb if you're running the right kind of list. The Gnaw holes changed in this book that you can teleport through each Gnaw hole, so essentially you can get 3 teleports. If you turn something into a Gnaw Bomb, you can get 4 teleports. Worth keeping in mind that you can only go through each Gnaw hole once, but they can all come out at the same Gnaw hole. So you can have 3 units go through 3 different Gnaw holes, you make a terrain a Gnaw Bomb, and 3 units suddenly appear around that terrain piece that you turned into a Gnaw hole.
And it doesn't require a hero anymore, does it? It used to require a hero to activate the Gnaw hole. Now it doesn't, right?
Yeah, that changed again. It never used to. Then it changed to you needing a hero, and now that's gone again. So just hold it within 6 and the movement phase, and in you hop, and out you come. So the obvious combo that you can see with this one is this is what you use with your Storm Fiends to get them into position. They can zone out your Gnaw holes all they want, so you can't send your Storm Fiends through the Gnaw holes. But when the whole board, every piece of terrain on the the board can become a gnaw hole, then those Storm Fiends are getting into range to use those rattling guns at 2 damage, which are pretty tasty.
I will go back for a second and talk about the command traits. I think for me, if I'm going to pick one from Clan Eschen, it's incredible agility. Not for the ability to fly. I think fly is great and it'll be helpful to get your model to where it needs to be. But it's a second part where I can access the finest hour twice. I think that is an interesting ability. It's such, finest hour is so good. Getting it twice in the right list with the right hero is, potentially a chef's kiss.
Yeah. Like I said, my combo is incredible agility with Shadow Magnet Trinket. You make your Deceiver fly, so it doesn't matter if he's surrounded. You pop fight first, and then you use the Allegiance ability to scurry away. So basically, you get one turn of you can't kill this Deceiver because he's fighting first and he's running away. So you can do some really cool things. The other interesting thing with Gnaw Bomb is gnaw holes are impassable now. So defensible terrain, whatever it's called. So it's been around for a while now because I've had that rule for a bit, but I want to. I'm hoping in the fact they address this because it's been around for a while. But if something's garrisoned inside a defensible terrain and you turn it into a gnaw hole that's impassable, what happens, right? So that's a pretty cool little mind. It'll blow your mind trying to figure it out because there's no answer. But yeah.
And speaking of gnaw holes, they no longer were they deadly in the past? They were deadly or sinister. They did something to your opponent. That's been shut off. Yeah, it's just pure +1 to cast the teleport stuff.
So what gnaw holes give you now is that's gone. They give you +1 to cast spell and unbind or +1 to your prayers. The big thing with gnaw holes is it's within 3 inches. It's not like terrain where you've got to be an inch next to it. It's 3 inches, so it's pretty crazy. So good.
Didn't it used to be 6 though? Didn't you have to be within 6? It's been tightened up.
No, I think it used to be within an inch. Because actually this gnaw hole gets the arcane scenery rule, but now it's like its own rule, and it's 3 inches away instead of an inch. So it's pretty amazing, honestly. You can get those heroes a bit more flexible where you can put them. So
I had actually a gnaw hole with an opponent recently where they were in a bubble for both arcane and a gnaw hole, so getting +2 to the cast. The jerk. Before we move on,
to do these days now, actually, yeah. And the other cool thing is the Pestilence Great Plagues are just on the roll; they're not unmodified roll. So if you get within range of a gnaw hole and a mystical, you're +2 to your cast, and then you need a 4 for your Great Plague. So it's pretty cool.
Joel, don't ruin Christmas. We haven't gotten to Pestilence yet.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting excited.
You're opening up Christmas opening up the presents before Santa's come along. Quick question from Flip the Bacon. Do you think Emerald Life Swarm is a good use in Skaven? And they love the idea of bringing 6 clan rats back. Thoughts on Emerald Life Swarm in general for Skaven?
I think there's better options, personally. A lot of the endless spells got a glow up, and Emerald Life Swarm got a bit of a nerf, I guess, because it doesn't double tick when it only heals now when it moves, not when it's set up. It did get +2 to its range for when it heals, so you got a 3-inch heal now. So in the past, you might not be able to get it within an inch because something's in a fight. You got a bit more range, you might be able to reach what you want to heal now. But I'd be looking elsewhere for endless spells. I think, unfortunately, there's better options, and there's some amazing options for this army in particular. So probably not, unfortunately, but it's still a good spell. Absolutely, it's still worth it, but I'd be looking elsewhere for Skaven.
And if I was bringing Life Swarm, it's probably not towards Clan Rats, because Clan Rats are always bringing back models at the end of the Battle Shock phase. I'm probably going to be healing up my big unit of Storm Fiends. I'm bringing back some more of my punchier units as opposed to Clan Rats. But you run what you want to run. There's a great plethora of just, whether it's Gnashing Jaws, Geminids, Purple Sun, Lockie the Boatman, if you're taking Thanquol, is a great combination. There's a lot of really good endless spells right now. Skaven's
definitely a magic and a magic dom army in some ways. So Cogs is incredible in this army as well.
Yeah, Cogs is a good one as well. So either way, you've got a lot of good choices. You do you. Anything else when it comes to Eschen?
I think a lot of lists will have pieces of Eschen in them. I wouldn't go purely to Eschen, but it's great to include. Deceiver is it's a support hero. It can do good damage, but it's a support hero, one of the best support pieces in the book. It does so much for the army. So a lot of times you'll just see, maybe 1 or 2 units of Eschen, maybe some Night Runners to give you a pre-game move to screen something off, keep that Alpha Strike away if Iron Jaws or something becomes really popular in your area or whatever tournaments you attend, for example. So, and Gutter Runners for that deep strike and try and mortal something off. So, yeah, I think a lot of armies will include pieces of Eschen. You can definitely run an all Eschen army if that's your jam, and you'll have a great time and can do quite well. But yeah, I definitely think you'll see a lot of Eschen units as 1 or 2 units in each army.
I think even just taking like Night Runners or Gutter Runners, I think having some unit versatility. I love the idea of running one unit of Night Runners, being able to pre-game move, especially if you are going to be high drop and your opponent's not going to, you're not going to get the chance of who's going first. If your opponent is going to be one of these turn one in your faces, Nurgle Flies, for example, or the Sylvaneth Bugs, they want to get the free pre-game like 12-inch move up, and then they're going to move another 12 inches or whatever it works out to be. You can use those Night Runners to push them back, to keep them at bay, and get them to avoid your juicy squishy center.
Yeah, Skaven's it doesn't take allies. You only take allies if you've got a Pestilence General, and that's only Nurgle. So these guys, you're only access to a pre-game move. And for 90 points, you're happy to throw them away to keep something more important alive. So, yeah, Night Runner's absolutely a good shout out.
Yeah, and by the way, I agree with Bartik. Purple Sun and the lunchbox. I call him the Uber driver. They're probably the first 2 endless spells I'd be picking if
I prefer Geminids as my choice with
Molder. What have we got in Molder?
Sorry, I think I'm slagging a bit. Yeah, just on that point, my choice with Thankful would be Geminids, but I'll touch on that further when we go through my list, I think, at the end. But yeah, don't write off Geminids.
Yeah, and we will go through your list. We will go through your list at the end.
Awesome, cool. I'll touch on it there then. Cool. So Molder, it's an interesting one, Molder. I'm not sure on where this is going to fall. I've heard lots of varying opinions on this is straight trash to this is amazing, and it will dominate. I could depend on the meta as well. If we turn into big horde metas, then yeah, these guys, they'd love that. They go pretty crazy. But I kind of see them as the same as Eschen. I think a lot of lists you'll see Rat Ogres, 1 unit of 2 or 4 Rat Ogres with a Master Molder for that Master Clan ability we talked about earlier. They've got cheap bodies. Rat Ogres do pack a bit of a punch as well. And Master Molders on a 3-up can bring them back to life. So that's what I think you'll see a lot of. I'm not sure. I think Master Molder takes a very specific person, and a lot of their sculpts are quite old, which is my knock on them. They really need a line update. I've been looking, unfortunately, at 3D printers just because I'd rather run GW, but they won't update the models. And for some reason, we don't get Isle of Blood Rat Ogres anymore, which I'd like to play with. So that's where I've been looking. But yeah, that's sort of how I feel, unfortunately. They really need a bit of love, bit of a line update.
You raise a good point. I think for me, when I look at Clan Molder in general, I think I like some of the options. I like the idea of using potentially giant rats. I like the idea of using potentially rat ogres. Molder has some good things that you can tap into, whether it's, rat swarms. There's a whole bunch of good things, right? It depends on how you build and what you want to build around. But would I specifically start looking at the Hell Pit Abomination? I look at the Hell Pit and look, it's got 14 wounds. It has a 2d6 move. It has a save of 5 up. It has some interesting things you can possibly do. It heals. It ignores effects of spells and endless spells on a 4. Then you can obviously add these mutations to the Hell Pit. Is this enough for me to take a Hell Pit? Probably not. Now, if you love your Hell Pits, run your Hell Pits, but I'm personally not sold. And as you said, maybe it's the meta.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the big thing with the Hell Pit is it's Avalanche of Flesh. So when it goes to fight, you roll a dice for each model within 3 inches, and on a 2-up, it takes a mortal wound. Obviously, you can see there's a mutation there called Quivering Bulk, so it adds 1 to the roll. So basically makes it a 1-up, so every unit or every model within 3 inches takes a mortal wound for a unit. So if like hordes become big or you're running into a bunch of witch elves or something like that, or zombies. It's like, cool. Yep, whatever's in 3 inches, cool, you're dead. So that could be really cool if that becomes a really big thing. I reckon you'd love that one, Coach, with your witch elves. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think they're quite there to include this as a piece in your army, unfortunately.
Yeah, like if I was going to run one, I think the 2d6 move makes me a little bit nervous. What I want to do with it, is it potentially something that's good? It sits in the backfield and maybe protects my back line as the rest of my force moves forward, or is teleporting around with gnaw holes, maybe. And then maybe I go with the toughness and get the extra wounds and the better save, and that's a real tanky piece in the backfield. Would I use it as a threat? Like, I think it's just there's just better options. But hey, if I'm a passionate Clan Molder person, you do you, run all the hell pits, run all the master molder stuff and get pack
Rat
masters.
packs, giant rats.
Yeah. I think rat ogres are probably the best thing in Molder.
Easy. And your master molder's good too, because he's a support piece like we've covered a few times. Your combos and your power pairs, that's one of the better power pairings in the book, because we talked about the +3 to run and charge, but that buff also gives them +1 to wound as well. So they'll be wounding on 2s. So yeah, pretty amazing. You can take a pack master to do that if you're low on points. So the pack masters, you get 3 for 65. They're just a unit; they're not heroes, so you're not having to waste a hero slot. And they will give you the +3 to run, charge, and wound. The master molder has an extra ability for his 90 points. He takes up a hero slot, which you might want to help fill out a battalion. And on a 3-up, the first time they die on a 3-up, they come back. So it's a really powerful combination.
Is there any artifacts or command traits that you would like out of these? Like, for example, artifacts, if you were going to take a Molder faction, and look, they're heroes in general as well. Like, I wonder, are they even worth putting an artifact on to begin with?
Yeah, I don't think really be looking at these if you're running a whole Molder army. Although the Rabid Crown is an interesting take, because obviously you're going to have your Master Molder. He's the only one that can take it. He's going to be up behind your Rat Ogres. He's whipped them, so he's given them +3 to run, charge, and wound. This gives them +1 to hit if you want to use your all-out attack somewhere else. And then those Rat Ogres are on 2s and 2s, 6s explode. And I think they neg 1, 2 damage. Quite a few attacks each. I can't remember off the top of my head, but really, really good, really punchy. So that can, guarantee that the +1 to hit, so you can save it elsewhere, or if you get roared or things like that. So that's probably the only one I like here. But a couple of the other ones are quite good if you're running a full Molder list. For example, the Molder Supreme can be pretty handy. To add 1 to hit and wound is within 13. So if you're running it gets better if you're running a whole Molder list. That's probably the only time you really look at things like that.
Yeah, and I'm mentioning these, Joel, because some people might want to go all Molder or heavy Molder. For some people, like, look, yeah, if I'm building a bit of a mixed force, I'm probably not going to put my one artifact on the Molder. But if I'm going towards a full Molder, then yeah, like calling that out.
This is where I think you can see that maybe they haven't put as much time and effort into this book as they could have, because the Horde Master command trait is exactly the same as what the Master Molder has on his War Scroll already. So it's like, why is this here? Like it's literally, I have this already on the War Scroll. It literally does nothing. So why is it here? So it's odd, very odd, a bit disappointing, I guess, but yeah, it is what it is.
I do like Foulhide as an artifact, being able to turn the bearer into a wounds characteristic of 10, which is pretty cool. And then it gets to heal 1 wound at the start of your hero phase. A good call out from Hannah in the chat is that the Hell Pit Abominations can go through gnaw holes. So popping it through a gnaw hole, then if you use your Master Clan ability to kind of get some sexy charge replacements, maybe there's something in there. Maybe there's some secret tech that I haven't thought about.
Yeah, that's it. There is reliable ways to get around the 2d6 movement, which can be a bit frustrating. The Foulhide, I think, would be so much better if it was 9 wounds instead of 10, because then you lose all the cool things that you get when you're less than 10 wounds.
I was going to call that out. I was going to say that, when you do move to the 10 characteristic, it does change some of the interactions. So Yeah, good call. Good call. Anything else from Mulder? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Like, it's ultimately focused on buffing the hell pits. Unfortunately, there are some other boosts, but like a lot of your allegiance is tied into a unit that you might not run, or you might not run a lot of in a competitive sense.
Yeah, it's frustrating because the allegiance ability only works on one unit, and it's not the unit that you would be wanting to run from Mulder. It's the Rat Ogres that you'd be looking at. So a lot of the times you'll take that and you'll get no benefit from this, unfortunately. If you're that crazy guy that wants to run 4 hell pits and a bunch of little rat packs all over the place, look, it's cool. You can have a good time. You know what you're there for. I think the thing you'll see a lot of from Mulder is your Rat Ogre and your Master Mulder combination. That's what you're going to see a lot of.
Agreed. And Rat Ogres have become popular, which is which is great. It's just a shame that the Isle of Blood Ogres are probably the better ones of the 2 Rat Ogre varieties. Another clan that I'm not that big of a fan of, and maybe I'm being a bit harsh on them, which is the clan Verminus. Seems, as someone else mentioned in the chat earlier, a little vanilla. So your clan Verminus, which is what? Your Vermin Lord Warbringer, your Claw Lord, Spike's Claw and his Swarm, Clan Rats, and your Storm Vermin. So you've got the Mighty Warlord. So it's a heroic action that can be used for a friendly Claw Lord. If you do so, the eligible command trait from page 70 to 71 what? So you get pick an extra command trait for a heroic action.
You get extra command trait for heroic action, yeah. It's only from basically saying you only pick a Verminus command trait to do it with. Verminus, they're kind of the guys that provide all the troops for all the other clans. So we need some little dudes are going to die here. Have some clan rats. So they're the most populous of the clans, I guess. There is a bit of secret and hidden tech in Verminus, which doesn't sort of jump out at first. Probably the biggest hammer in the book can be the Warbringer. For example, when you take the generic command trait that all heroes get access to for +2 attacks, you juice him up with and he's got 2 profiles, and you put Flaming Weapon on him because the Vermin Lords can only take generic spell lore, so Flaming Weapon, Levitate, etc. That guy can get pretty punchy. And the Warbringer is also a great take because he gives you access to Dreaded Death Frenzy, I think it's called.
I was about to call that out. Is the Dreaded Death Frenzy spell, which is successfully cast on a 7. Pick 3 D3 friendly Skaven units wholly within range until your next hero phase. They can fight before they die. So if they get slain, they get to fight. So that's pretty good. And you look, you're right. Like the Vermin Lord does slap. Like it's got some good rend. The Spike Fist wounds on a 2-up. It has a 5-up ward. You can re-roll wound rolls for attacks within 13 inches of 3 or more Skaven units. Double
Still got
caster.
the re-roll, which is pretty amazing. You combine that with the Warpstone Charm, so it gives -1 to save to everything within 3 inches, so whatever it's fighting. So the guy can get pretty crazy punchy. We were talking about the Arc Warlock being a bit of a tiny hero that you can just sort of launch. It's a bit of a missile towards something. You can do that with the Claw Lord pretty successfully as well. You can get that guy going pretty crazy with a few buffs. So Verminus definitely has some play for sure. And a few of these things in here can also apply to Storm Vermin. So they don't look like much at first, but they can get pretty crazy once you layer on a couple of buffs.
So, for example, like if I just break down this allegiance ability, so let's say, for example, I'm going to pick my general as the Verminus Warbringer, and I want it to have the Savage Overlord command trait, which if a friendly Skaven unit within 3 inches of the general fails a battle shock, if you do so, if it hasn't. Okay, so basically, let's say I pick Savage Overlord as my command trait. If I activate the Mighty Warlord allegiance ability, or the allegiance ability via the heroic action, it means I could then tap into the Devious Adversary for the +2 attacks, in addition to having Savage Overlord in that turn. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can have. It doesn't say you can only have one command trait. Like you can have both. So definitely stack those up. And things like Powerful Alpha is pretty amazing as well. You think Manfred's Ignore the First one is pretty powerful. This little fella gets Ignore 2 or your Warbringer as well. So they're all quite good, I think.
And then if I have 3 or more Claw Lords, then all of my current heroic action friendly Claw Lords that are one the same command trait cannot be picked. Okay, so I couldn't put Devious Adversary on all 3 of my heroes. It just means that I could get basically a whole bunch of extra command traits, but I can't double up on command traits still.
Yeah, which is probably a good thing. You could do something a bit crazy there. So
I was just thinking, like, if you had three heroes, 3 Claw Lords tapping into Devious Adversary, like that could be brutal, especially if you're using a bunch of like Warbringers. Yeah,
there's definitely some play in Verminous for sure. You can mix these guys. You can go pure Verminous, and you can have a lot of success. So I don't find them that vanilla myself. I think there's definitely some tech in there that when you have a bit of a look and you put it all together, and you start to paint the picture, you can really juice up those heroes, juice up your storm vermin. Put things like Skaven Brew and that on them, and then the reroll wounds from your Warbringer, things like that. Yeah. You can put in work. They're pretty punchy.
Is Powerful Alpha the command trait that you would take?
It depends on the build. Like, for example, if you're running big hordes, like your 60 blocks of Clan Rats we talked about before, or you're running your 30 blocks of Storm Vermin because you can make them into a really good hammer unit, and you're worried about things like it might not be your first pick, but for things like heroic action, if you versus a Nighthorn army with that flexibility, my heroic action is going to be Claw Lord gets this, then even if I can't Inspiring Presence, I've got access to things like this. So my first pick would be Devious Adversary most of the time for the +2 attacks. I don't think the Bodyguard one is super important. So yeah, Ignore the First 2 wounds is really strong. It's really powerful ability. So that'd be your go-to for a Verminous command trait for sure.
Does I'm just, as I'm talking to you, I'm just scrolling through looking for the Clan Rats timing. So I was just curious, like if I use the Clan Verminous Savage Overlord, let's say like I've suffered a bunch of battle shock with my Clan Rats. I use Savage Overlord. They don't fail the battle shock test, but they take D3 mortal wounds. Is the sequence they take the mortal wounds and then they can heal back D3? Or is it the other way around? Like, I'm just trying to look for when the activation is of the different rules.
So this happens when you fail a battle shock rule. So the battle shock rule, you take the battle shock test in the battle shock phase, and the Clan Rats heal at the end of the battle shock phase.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, you take the D3 first. So if you got 2 left and you roll a 3 or 4, then you're a little bit sad, I guess.
Thank you. That I was trying to look for when the activation was of the Clan Rats returning. Was it in the battle shock at the start? Is it at the end? Was it like when was it? So cool. So it means I can take the D3 mortals, not fail the battle shock test because I'm using Savage Overlord. Then I can heal back some Clan Rats. So cool. Roll low there and roll high on the regeneration.
This, for some reason, the regen Clan Rats rule, I forget every game. I'm going to start writing it on my hand or something because it's pretty powerful, but I always forget that for some reason.
What about your artifacts? If you were going to go Clan Verminous for an artifact, do you have a favorite? I think I've got one. Yeah,
the Warpstone Charm I talked about before, because if you're running your Verminous heroes, you're juicing them up to be punchy, and basically adding an extra rend to your weapons, and it's not just the hero that punches them; it's everything within 3. So if you've got another unit next to your hero that's about to swing, it works on them too. So Warpstone Charm is definitely the clear winner for me. But Rust Cursed Armor isn't bad either.
And good reminder from the Dark Prince is that things like, Death Frenzy, for example, do last until your next hero phase. So it can be a good defensive mechanism to avoid like double turns or, obviously keeping your buffs on until your next turn. So, something to keep in mind. And,
Death Frenzy also was one of those spells that didn't change the Holy Within. So if you order Satal win 13 inches, cool, have Death Frenzy. So it's pretty powerful.
I don't mind the Shield of Distraction, if I'm being honest. The bearer cannot be picked as a target of a combat attack by more than one unit per phase. So depending on what I put it on or what I want to do with it, I actually don't mind that one.
It's not bad. I personally think it's a little bit of a trap. Just because the units that you're putting, if you put it on a Claw Lord, he's going to die to most things. The things that you're going to send in to kill your Warbringer aren't going to be a lot of MSU units. You're going to be sending in your big hammer unit that you put in your army to try and take care of him. So I personally would prefer the other ones. But in certain situations, say for example, Nighthaunt that want to charge you with 6, 7, 8 units to stack their debuffs, that's obviously amazing against things like Nighthaunt. So there's definitely play in it.
It is combat attacks. It doesn't stop anyone shooting the hero off. Yes, there'll be -1 penalties and things like that, but they can still be popped. So yeah, I think if you're building your Warbringer, you probably want to go as offensive as possible. I can see why you might go for some of the other options personally, but
the Storm Vermin, you don't need the Verminous Valor command trait. They've got the bodyguard built in, so it's quite defensive already. So that way, I think in your artifacts and your other command traits, you can go a bit more offensive because you might have a big block of Storm Vermin just sitting behind him, and that's going to keep him alive well enough.
I had that last week. I had a block of 30 Storm Vermin. Plus, it was a jerk. Luckily, I had Marathi and my Cauldron, and I got to fight in the hero phase as well. And Marathi was able to carve through, but it was a lot of work to get through 30. And my poor opponent was trying to pull back. So as they were pulling back the Storm Vermin, you could potentially pull out and then rally if you're lucky enough to get the double turn. So if you want to get yourself out of combat and then kind of bring them back, or remove from the brack and keep them within ward bodyguard range.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else you'd call out with Verminous?
The common theme of this book, I take a few pieces of Verminous in my list. For example, if I was running the Scry list, I'd be taking maybe some Storm Vermin to bodyguard your engineers to keep them alive, things like that. But I do think this is one of the clans where you could go full clans Verminous if that was your thing, and do quite well. I think there's a lot of strength in this clan for sure.
Dark Prince also making a good point is that Savage Overlord is not a one-use only command trait. So you could daisy chain and protect all of your units if you're within 3 inches from Bale Shock. So okay, it's a good call.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't actually say pick one friendly Skaven unit that would fail a battle shock. So if you had something with a generous base, again, your Vermin Lord, and it's within 3 inches of 2 units, then you could use it twice.
And the units that you're going to be using on are, most of the time going to be 25 mil bases, so it is quite easy to daisy chain back. So yeah, that's really good pickup, man. That's a really good spot. They could definitely see some play. Really
good shout. Then we have the Great Wall of Text, which is the Clan Pestilence. So there's 2 things. First off, your allegiance ability is based on these Great Plagues. So when you make a chanting roll for friendly Clan Pestilence priests, you get to add 1 to the chanting roll for each other friendly Clan Pestilence wholly within 13 of the chanter. In addition, if the chanting roll for the prayer is a 6+, plus meaning it can be modified, you can pick one of the following Great Plagues to manifest in addition to each of the prayers. Each Great Plague can only be manifested once per battle, and no more than 1 Great Plague can manifest in the same turn. So we talked earlier about the Gnarholes being able to add +1 to your prayer and your chanting. So it's probably not going to be hard to get that 6 up down to what, a 4 or a 3?
You can get it on a 2 up if you take enough, and then you can take the high, I think it's called High Priest, generic command trait to reroll your prayer. So you can almost guarantee you're getting a Great Plague on your first turn. And one of the Great Plagues is obviously to reroll your chanting rolls. So you basically guarantee that. Then all your priests get to reroll all their chanting rolls for the rest of the game. And then you've got 3 or 4. If you're building into it, you can have 3 or 4 priests. So surely one of those guys is going to roll a 4, 5, 6 up, depending on how close they are, and you can almost guarantee to get a Great Plague every turn. So that could be a really fun build for sure.
And what you do probably find is Clan Pestilence is probably the one that rewards you the most by going mono faction, or as close to mono, especially as you've mentioned, having multiple priests to be able to improve the chanting rolls and hit off the Never Plague, where it allows you to re-roll chanting rolls for friendly pestilence, then being able to do things like Redmaw to basically turn one of your opponent's models against themselves or their army. There's a lot of good prayers in there.
The Redmaw Plague is one of those things that I think will attract a lot of people. It can give you that one amazing moment in your game that you're going to remember from it, where you take control of one of their key heroes and they turn around and bonk off one of their units. That's a really cool one. I'm glad that stayed in.
So I'm going to read it out, and Joel, tell me what it means to you. So if you pick the Redmaw Plague, which is the Great Plague, you pick the nearest enemy hero within 13 inches of the chanter. That hero is infected with the Redmaw Plague for the rest of the battle. If several heroes are, you basically just find out what's the closest. At the start of the combat phase, if that affected hero is within 3 inches of other units from your opponent's army and not within 3 inches of the Skaven army, you can treat that hero as a friendly unit until the end of that combat phase. What does that mean?
So to me, it means it basically becomes a part of your army and use it as part of your army for that phase. I've seen the argument that it's still your opponent's unit. It's just friendly for you, so it's still friendly to your opponent's units at the same time. So can it actually attack your opponent's units or not, because they're still friendly units? So I think hopefully they address that in the FAQ. I'm not sure myself. I'm not over that one in terms to it's a bit of a rules lawyery one, I guess. It's very hard to dig through the weeds and find the answer, but that's how I would play it. Is that otherwise it doesn't do that much for you, right? I guess you're already outside three of it, so you're not going to fight. So you taking control of it does nothing. So yeah, I feel like the intent of it is it can fight your opponent's units, but some people are going to argue the other way.
Seems pretty clear to me that if you're within 3 inches, if you're not within 3 inches of, if you do the Redmaw Plague on the enemy hero and it's not within 3 inches of a Skaven unit, but it is within 3 inches of someone else in their army, then they're going to smash themselves. Like it's pretty simple.
I mean, the rule says it can't be within 3 inches of any of your units, right? So you're taking control, but it's not like it's stopping it from hitting your units because you can't be within range of it anyway. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I hope they address it so it avoids any arguments. But it's not. Yeah, I would say there's not a clear answer. Rules is written at the moment, so they could have written that one a little bit better.
Cool. But in top of all of that, like, so you obviously got access to your Great Plagues, being able to get the re-roll to the prayers, which is great. There are also extra prayer laws that are going to come up in a minute. So you've got access to more prayers, and maybe why you want to get multiple pestilence priests in your army to obviously get your boost to your chance, as well as access to the Great Plague. But you do have some extra command traits and artifacts, and we'll get to spells and prayers in a minute. Do you have a favorite command trait and artifact?
I'm not a huge fan of the command traits. I'd rather have the generic reroll than add one to chanting. The Plague Claw is a bit of a joke of a unit, unfortunately. It's been discussed before, but it's one attack that does D6 damage, so adding 1 damage to one attack is pretty average. I feel like they wrote damage instead of attack here. If it added 1 to the attacks of the Plague Claw to make it 2 attacks, then definitely you could think about it. But right as it is now, it's absolutely useless. The Ridden with Poxes again. I've seen some people use this with their Plague Furnace because it is quite hard to kill, and you can make it a mortal wound machine. Between its sensor swinging around, and then the artifact that does mortal wounds as well at the start of the combat phase. So you can, chunk it up to be a big mortal wound bomb. So that one's kind of cool, but I'd be looking at generics or other command traits from other parts of the army. The Blade of Corruption is incredible on your Corruptor, especially if you run things like Devious Adversary plus 2 attacks. So people that don't know, the Corruptor is 2d6 attacks. So to be able to guarantee an extra 2 attacks on 2d6 sort of insulates you from a bad roll and gives you more chance to roll those 6s to wound for neg3 ren 6 damage, which is obviously crazy, like incredible if you spike on that. Like, my God, you'll take anything off. The Fumigatus, or I don't know if I'm saying that right, obviously with the Plague Furnace, I think you could do a little mortal wound, cool little mortal wound thing there, but I wouldn't look at it. Blisterverse, the Living Cyst, is really cool, and like I think one of the best memes in the game. So it gives you strike first, and starting from the second battle round, you can send this artifact to another Clan Pestilence hero. Now, there's no range on that. So your Corruptor, you put the Blade of Corruption on him, so he's a big hitter. And then your Plague Priest that's sitting in the corner just lobs this artifact like 60 inches across the board to your Corruptor that's gone through the Gnaw hole. Starting quarterback for the New York Giants, this Plague Priest hurls this artifact across, and then he gets to strike first. So that one can be amazing as well.
The other consideration is that you must transfer it. But if you've only got one Pestilence hero, then it can't send it to another Clan Pestilence hero. So if you want to avoid the as you mentioned, the running quarterback passing it on, then just pick one hero and use it.
Yeah, and you just time it right. So if you're running the Corruptor, he's a combat hero. Obviously, he's gonna make the best use of this. You send it to him on the important turn.
And as Reflex Dog is talking about, Reflex Dog training is mentioning plague sensor bearers. If any part of this book got a glow up, it's Pestilence. I was around back in the day when Pestilence was its own book before the Skaven book, and Pestilence slapped. It slapped hard. I feel like it started to come back, and you are going to see, and I think it was Vince Ventrella who called it out in his stream. He was mentioning that the profile of the plague sensor bearers is almost like it's very close to the Annihilators in Stormcast. Yes, you can't drop from the sky and get a re-rollable 7-inch charge, but it will slap. It will slap hard.
I mean, they're amazing, and just the base war scroll in itself is amazing. And then the buffs you can put on top of them are so mental. Just remember the things we've covered: Skaven Brew, Death Frenzy. There'll be a prayer coming up that there's 2 prayers coming up that you can put on them. Like you can get them up to, I think, 6 attacks on 2s, neg 1, 2 damage. Then they fight. They do the same on death. So
+1 attack when they charge, and they get +1 to wound if they're within 18 inches of plague monks, and get subtract. I think it's subtract 1 for wound rolls for attacks made against them. Like far out. Like they are going to be a popular. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about plague sensor bearers.
I've got 10. I would love to own like 30 or 40. Like you'll see armies with 30 or 40 of them. Yeah, they're so good. It's great, and you've never seen them before. They've always been bad, so it's cool that you might actually see these guys. I don't mind the sculpt. A lot of people hate on it, but I don't mind it. I think it's cool.
One call out and then a question. Bartik mentioning really good point. One of the things with Redmore that you can be really beneficial is tapping into some of those once per game abilities. You could potentially do it to Dark Master if you're able to get into Kairos, into Be'lakor, and be able to take over the Dark Master if they hadn't spent it already. If something like Aether Quartz or Kairos's re-rolls, being able to change dice rolls, all of those things that are available, even if you can't take them over and fight in the hero phase or fight in general. You can use Redmore to do some of these things. So a good call out here, Bartik. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately on Be'lakor, he pops that in the opponent's hero phase. So that's a no-go, but I'm absolutely on Kairos or heroes, Lumineth. It's only heroes, unfortunately. So your Lumineth heroes burning the Aether Quartz could be cool. Not as impactful as Kairos, obviously, but yeah, absolutely. You can really mess with the opponent's plans doing that. Redmore Plagues, yeah, so cool. Good fun.
Is there any Nurgle units that you would take? I mean, that's very thematic, right? Pestilence are very Nurgle-y. Would you bring any Nurgle units into the mix for Clan Pestilence? I can only think of one, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure they really work, because the issue with Nurgle is the ward used to be on the War Scroll. Now it's in the Allegiance abilities, so you're paying for things you don't have access to anymore. The one I've seen people talk about is maybe Nurglings. Yeah. So that could be an option, but from what I've looked at, there wasn't really I saw much interest in, unfortunately. Flies could be cool. You're going to run a lot of priests, and you're probably going to have a curse on one of those priests. So maybe your plague drones with their shooting with bulk attacks. You could look, but again, if they had the 5 ward on the War Scroll, I'd be like, yeah, cool, let's try some Nurgle. But for me, they just lose too much short on the. You're paying points for things you don't get anymore, basically. So.
And if you're picking Nurglings because you want to be able to pull out a model in the opponent's territory through the terrain piece, it begs the question: are you better off just taking Gutter Runners?
Exactly, and Skaven are probably one of the best books in the game in regards to moving units around the board through teleports and shenanigans. So, do you really need another one? Probably not.
Liam, yes, it is. Like I can say the Skaven Pestilence book is back in the day. This OG like first edition stuff where Stormcast had like a book that was purely for like what is it essentially Fulminators, like is it Chamber Excelsius or whatever it was. Like it was some bizarre. It seems like 84 years Bartek, 100% right. But Pestilence in general has definitely glow up. It's a whole bunch of good things from Pestilence, and I think you're going to see a lot more Pestilence focused armies in the future.
I think a lot of people were sad that Plague Monk stayed at 10, didn't go to 20, which kind of sucks, yeah, because obviously you're 20 or you're 30 max, but I think they're still really good. Just by the way of buffs you can layer on them, you can still make them into a really punchy unit.
But you could only, like, even in the old book, you could only go up to a maximum. I think Plague Monks only ever went up to a maximum of 40. So it's not
40.
like you ever had a horde of 60. So, you could go like the Gloomspite Gits where they're like jumping on 15s or whatever. But anyway, Pestilence overall looks good. And it kind of complements the moving over to the fact that you do also have prayers. Both you Grey Seer has spells, Scryer has spells, and Pestilence has prayers. I think the Grey Seer ones are no-brainers. Skitterleap and Death Frenzy are both cracking spells to choose. Would you agree with that?
So my list, I've purchased a spell enhancement to give all my Master Clan Skitterleap and Death Frenzy. So that should tell you that yes, it's very handy to have access to both of these spells at all times. They're amazing for sure.
What do you like about Skitterleap?
Skitterleap, it just gets your hero anywhere on the board. It's in the hero phase. People talking about Lawcom, which is in the hero phase. This is still in the hero phase, so there's still a lot of things you can do. Throw out endless spells, cast spells or debuffs or things on other people, move heroes next to other units that might have a buff that they can put on that happens in the hero phase, teleport on the opponent's backfield objective, get behind things. Your battle tactic where you take a terrain in your opponent's territory, or you need 2 units behind. Like endless possibilities with this thing. It's you have to have it in your list. I think it's incredible. Yeah, you're always going to find a use for it.
Yeah, I've found a lot of value. There's been times where I've been clutching for the battle tactics as I get late into the game, and desecrate their land, for example, like being able to claim a terrain piece has been so valuable. And if you're able to Skitterleap a wizard, just take it over, you're contesting it 1-0, boom, you've got yourself a battle tactic. So that in itself, let alone being able to, move away from combats, to be able to go in and reinforce another part of the board, to claim an objective. Skitterleap is just a cracking spell to have. And it's relatively easy to cast on a 6 as well. So, it's really good.
Units, and this worth to add on to that. Grey Seer, the units are taking this once per turn in the hero phase. They get to roll on 3d6 to remove the lowest. So, again, makes it even almost guaranteed to get off. It's very rare that I don't successfully cast Skitterleap. Obviously, unless it's unbound, but to cast it nearly always happens.
Who are good recipients of Death Frenzy?
Basically everything, except heroes, because they're not allowed to. The big ones to me, I normally chuck it on my Sensor Bearers, because they're killy as all hell. Storm Vermin can be a good one because you can make them really killy. Plague Monks. A lot of units in this book, you can take them in, bigger than a small unit. So you reinforce them once or twice. You lay the buffs on and you give them Death Frenzy so they get to fight twice. You can only fight twice in a phase, so it's worth noting you can't Death Frenzy, Dreaded Death Frenzy, so you can fight on death twice on something. You can certainly fight twice in the same phase. That's a core rule. So you can't fight, then get killed, and then fight twice again. So worth remembering that one. But yeah, look, this just doubles your output, I guess, because you're fighting twice. It can make it a hard decision for your opponent to want to charge something because they know if I kill this, it gets to fight me when it dies. Yeah, incredible spell. Again, you want to have this in every list, 100%.
What about Scryer? If you're taking Scryer Wizards, what's your... I think all three of them are good spells. What's your priority order? What's first, what's second, what's third?
If you're taking Scry units or building a Scry list, more warp power. It's been the Scry spell the whole way through. It hasn't changed. So obviously that's your first choice because you're going to use that on your Storm Fiends or your reinforced block of Acolytes. Your Warp Lightning Shield can be kind of cool too. I think that's got interesting play on your
The Lightning Shield.
Yeah, Warp Lightning Shield.
Yeah, I really like that spell. I really like that, being able to, the first 3 wounds cast, basically you can negate the first 3 wounds, but then on the 4th one, they just all go through.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a gamble, but there's no opportunity cost because you're going to take the 3 anyway, right? So if they don't put enough into it or it makes them commit more than they otherwise would have to waste resources, then yeah, it can be for sure be an interesting one. Chain Warp Lightning, I think it's clearly the worst of the 3, but again, it could Skittle Leap something in front of someone's whole army, and if they're all bunched up in a castle, then they all take a mortal wound. So it could actually add up to be quite a few. So for sure has some play as well.
And there's, when we start kind of getting into these layer of the onion, as you called it out, you can start to see the combination start to form out. Bartik mentioning, Death Frenzy plus dreaded Death Frenzy on the Warbringer, Skittle leaped into your opponent. Like, there's just so many crazy combinations that on its surface, like, you're like, okay, cool, there's some good stuff in there. But when you start connecting the dots, you start to see the true power of Skaven, which is, again, one of the list builder's dreams, because there's just so much potential to unlock.
Oh mate, yeah, you could sit there for days writing lists nonstop, and if I take this out and add this, yeah, it's definitely, if you enjoy list building, it's a good army to jump on.
Hannah mentioning Death Frenzy with more warp power on Doom Wheels with the Vial of the Fulminator. Again, like, this is so much craziness, and that's why I love you, Skaven folk, because you've got to be snorting the you got to start snorting that green stuff to kind of get across this army. What about your Pestilence Prayers? I mean, we already know that you're going to get +1 if you're going to have multiple priests within 13, holy within 13. You get +1, so you got a whole access. By the way, you've still got Curse. You've still got what's the other universal bloody prayer that's popular?
I use Bless, which is a 6-up board, quite a bit, but everyone gets that. I'm not sure what the other one is. Is there another one? I just look at Curse.
Yeah, I mean, Curse, you can use it on Curse, which is going to be great, especially with all those Plague Monks going in. Can be quite powerful. Flip the Bacon, we will get there in a minute. We'll talk about the Skaven Endless spells. Do you have any favorites from the Pestilence Priest options?
All 3 are good. I think it's amazing that all 3 go off on a 3. So you sit something next to a Gnawhole, within 3 goes off on a 2. So very reliable. I mean, add 1 to your wound rolls if you want to run your Censer Bearers and you don't want to take Plague Monks. There you go, you're on 2s to wound again. Adding 1 to the attacks of a unit. That's everyone would love to have that prayer in their book, I'm sure. Especially when you're running a big blob of Censer Bearers or Plague Monks. The disease is amazing too, especially with things like Skittle Leap, so you can get in range of the unit you want to hit and just clear out a third of that unit.
And Smite is the one. This the other prayer that I was trying. That was the one I was thinking of. I couldn't think of what it actually was. Thank you, Dark Prince. For me, Rabid is the one that I love. I mean, like, it's Filth or Rabid. I think getting the +1 attack characteristic on those Censer Bearers, for example, could really slap. Or if you have Rabid on Plague Monks and you're able to get Curse off as well, you can do some sensational damage, which is why I love the Clan Pestilence and why you probably will take multiple Clan Pestilence hero to access. Yes, you'll get access to some great plagues, but also just the ability to boost up those chant rolls.
Like I said before with the Grace here, when I bought the spell enhancement to get 2 spells, if you're running 2 or 3 Plague Priests, I'd seriously look at buying a prayer enhancement because you're probably going to want to have Curse on every single priest, or you can double up on having every priest with Filth and Rabid, for example, and just chuck disease on one off, a spare one off in the corner in case you want to teleport and clear out a bit of a horde unit. So they've all got play, and I would definitely consider buying a prayer enhancement if if you're running 2 or 3 of them, maybe 4.
By the way, Joel, I want to apologize. I said that we'd get this done in 2 hours, and it's already 2 hours and 15 minutes. Like, let's let's see if we can wrap this up soon. Like, we'll be here
Fair
forever.
enough.
And I think that's no. I'm not trying to hurry you up. Like, it's actually like this is a really good discussion, and we haven't really even gone through the war scrolls. You can, really, really get in deep with the weeds, and that's like a Cities of Sigmar. I could spend 10 hours talking about cities, and you still wouldn't get to an outcome because it's just so rich with the combinations, the synergies, what you can do with all the different buffs and things like that. A couple of things that I do want to call out before we get into the faction battle tactics and then your list is, are there any units that you think really won with this book? We talked Thankful and Boatman, for example. It's just a great combination. Is there any other units that you think are just absolute favorites of yours right now?
We talked about Sensor Bearers a lot. Obviously, they're an easy pick. You just take 3 seconds, look at the war scroll, and see that they're 90 points, and say, "Hell yeah!" It's good, and they haven't been on the table, so it's good to see those guys. I love the Deceiver. He was good in the last book, but with the new command traits and artifacts they've given him, that guy, you can do so many tricksy, crazy things that you shouldn't be able to do in the game that you can do with him. So I love what they've done with him. I definitely think he's got better. The Warbringer as well, for what we touched on before, you can make him probably one of the best hammers in the game, probably the best hero hammer in the book for sure. Things like gutter runners and night runners, big glow up. I think you'll see 1 or 2 of those in a lot of lists. Not every list, but most lists, I think, should include them. And if they don't, they should be putting them in. Rat Ogres are the obvious one. Like we've touched on a lot of these. Rat Ogres are amazing. If the Master Clan stays as it is, I think nearly every list will have Rat Ogres and the Master Molder in it. I really love the Scryer Acolytes. I think they're being massively underrated. You plug their stats into a stats hammer app and see the damage output, and you're like, oh, okay, hang on.
And then you plug in 20 of them in the Games Workshop website when you're buying them, Acolytes 1 each, and then you realize why you're not using them, unless you obviously own a 3D printer. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because of what Flip the Bacon had asked, which was, what are our opinions on endless spells? And the flipping of the tide here is, what are you not a fan of? And I'm going to say right now, I'm not a fan of all 3 of the Skaven endless spells. And the Warp Lightning Vortex, in my opinion, seems to have gotten worse. Do you agree
100%.
or disagree with that statement?
100%. The fact I've tried to use it a few times, and the fact that you've got to set it up an inch away from everything else, you can find it really hard to get it in the optimal position or where you want to get it. And the fact it doesn't stop flying units from getting fly anymore, that really hurts as well.
And the range got smaller. It wasn't a 6-inch range now to is it 3 inches?
The range is still the same, still 6. But yeah, it lost the stops fly part of it. It did drop down 10 points, but I just think that in combination with the glow up that basically every other endless spell got in this GHB, there's just better choices.
Yeah, that was probably. I thought there was a range. I thought there was something else other than the fly being removed. But when I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, it didn't get an improvement that I would need to see to bring the. Obviously, again, it's a cool spell. It looks great. It's Skaven. But right now, with so many great endless spells, you talked about it already: Chronomatic Cogs, the boat, some damage dealing spells. There's just too many good options that I would take, and this one struggles for me.
I haven't used it for a long time because a lot of people sort of don't enjoy playing against the Warp Lightning Vortex, but I can't remember if it's this iteration or a previous one that put in that has to be an inch away from everything else when it's set up part. So that might be what you're thinking of. I just can't remember when that got put on the scroll.
Yeah, I just remember it being. I swear it got. Yeah, I thought there was something else. No. The units within 3 inches of this endless spell cannot run. I thought that was more generous in the last edition, but look, doesn't matter. The fact that it's there's just better endless spells, and the stopping of flying, yeah, is enough for me. Is there any other units that you're not a fan of? I think for me, the Greyseer on Screaming Bell, I'm not a fan of, or at least there's just better options for my points.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not a fan of the warps here either. He lost the Battle Shock bubble, which was like think 26 inches. So basically like nearly the whole battlefield. So losing that and going up in points again. I think you'll still see him in some lists, but he's definitely not what he used to be. Yeah, I still like Plague Monks, but I don't think they're as good as what they used to be. But I'd still definitely use them. They were just really, really good before. They're now just good. So I guess they've gone down a bit. And you've touched on the endless spells. I really wish they would have done. Like, Plague Claw has always been bad. It's still bad, but it'd be cool to. I like the model. It'd be cool to see that on the table. So I guess it's a bit disappointing that they couldn't put a bit of effort into that, but it is what it is.
And Jonathan, asked about Screech Vermin King. Is it worth looking at? Yeah, absolutely. I think there's very few units in here that is not worth looking at. It just depends on the composition of the army and how you want to run it, and what are the clans that you want to incorporate into your list. So I think you've got to be really clear of what you're striving for. And Flip the Bacon is confirming that it used to be 6 and now it's down to 3. So I think the reducing of run has actually changed. I swear it was like, I was going crazy.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't used it for a very long time because people don't enjoy playing against it. So, but yeah, if that's happened, then again, another reason not to take it. I think if I wanted a big spell like that, I'd be looking at Purple Sun at the moment. So,
yeah, it's just too good and too versatile. I mean, Warp Lightning. So the Warp Lightning Vortex is KO's best endless spell available because they don't have to worry about the ranges, right?
And I mean, I'm sure they'd take Purple Sun if they could, but they don't control it when they summon it, so they can't really take Purple Sun. So they're still stuck on the Vortex, right?
You got some options, you got some battle tactics, and you got some grand strategies. I think, look, I'm not going to ask for your feedback on the grand strategies because it's pretty clear, right? It depends on the combination, whether you're Master Clan or Moldar, Master Clan and Eschen, Master Clan and Verminus, Master Clan and Scryer, Master Clan Pestilence. So as long as you can keep a hero on the board, so there's 3 or more. It's 3. When the battle ends, you complete the grand strategy if there are 3 or more blah blah in your on the battlefield. So it's really incentivizing you. I mean, the more of these duos you're going to have, the better chance you're going to have to score your grand strategy. Thoughts on these versus like what's currently in the battle pack?
I think your heroes are what really turn your army up. They are what hand out a lot of the buffs and combos that really power up your units from being pretty average to really good. So your opponent's going to be targeting them already. You're just giving them extra incentive to try and keep your heroes alive for the game. So I really don't like any of these personally. I'd be looking to the generic ones in the GHB. My 2 choices would be I can't remember the name of it. Take What's Theirs or something. We have more units in there. Starting zone than they do, because your army is just like, here, have a teleport, like everything can teleport. So that can be, I think that can be pretty achievable. The other one is might be Dominating Presence. I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. The one where you got to have 1 unit smack bang in the middle of the board, 1 GV, and they control all 4 quarters. That one. That one's called again.
Yeah, and obviously, again, if you're watching this 6 months later and in a different battle pack, different story. But again, if you're going to build, if you want to take into one of these grand strats, you're going to have to really focus on 2. 1, multiple heroes, many heroes, because your heroes are traditionally squishy and can die pretty easily. And 2, you want to be able to double down and have like lots of master clans and whatever you choose: Eschen, Moldar, Verminus, Scryer, Pestilence.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. I think got a bit of the short straw with the grand strats for the old Skaven book. Like I said, you're just putting a big red target on your heroes' backs that they really don't want to have. So I wouldn't look at any of these, and they're all, apart from the Vermin Lords, which aren't even super survivable themselves. All your heroes are very squishy, so it's not anything that's got any range or any threat range through movement as well isn't going to have too much trouble getting them if they really want to, especially as the game goes on. So,
do you find yourself using the Skaven battle tactics? So you got 4 options, right? You got 1 that's focused on rat ogres. 1, you pick an enemy hero with wounds characteristic of 10 or more and have no allocated wounds just yet. and you got to kill it. So, chipping it down is not going to help. One is going to be picking an enemy monster on the battlefield and shooting it down with a clan scryer. And then the other one is based on chanting 3 prayers with a pestilence priest.
These are, I think they're really cool and flavorful. They're probably what battle tactics should be. They shouldn't be super powerful. You have to sort of lean into a certain type of clan to be able to achieve them a lot of the time, which means it sort of limits you from having access or being able to achieve the other ones, which I think is really cool. The ones I'd look to, I think the Clan's Pestilence Priest one is super easy to do if you've got three Clan's Pestilence Priest. That's basically automatic here. Have a battle tactic.
Especially if you activate the Great Plague of re-rolling chance, right? Like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, you do that turn 1, turn 2, you go, okay, I can't do any battle tactics, let's do this one. Your Clan Scryer one, again, if you're taking any of the Storm Fiends or you're taking a shitload of Acolytes and they put a monster in the front and you got the option. The damage output can be pretty unreal, so that's a pretty easy one to achieve. If obviously it depends on your opponent having a monster, but it can be pretty achievable. But it requires you to have Scryer again. I think the Eschen one is going to be really hard to do a lot of the time because the heroes that you want to kill, usually your opponent's going to insulate with a screen that might make this achievable. So it's doable, but it's not going to be an auto achieve a lot of the time. The Rat Ogre one, I think there's 2 ways to heal Rat Ogres, and they both happen on a 3+. And they're D3. So I'm not sure I'd ever really use that one. That's a bit of an interesting one. But hey, if you got nothing else to do, roll the dice. See how you go.
Maybe that's when you bring the Life Swarm in as well. But,
True. There you go.
It's not worth it. Like it's an overkill for a battle tactic, and there's some good ones you can score, and like you do have access to a lot of Galethian veterans. So I probably agree. Fire, more, and Crescendo of the Diseased Choir, depending on your list makeup, but certainly the more achievable ones. But it's not like as a Skaven player you'll have access to 4. You've really got access to 1. Maybe 2 at most.
2, yeah.
And the rest you're relying on the battle pack.
The upside, I guess. I mean, yeah, I guess if compared to some other armies' battle tactics, they've got it a bit rough. But the upside is, at least in this current GHB, Skaven can achieve the generic ones quite well. They don't have too many problems, at least in my experience, getting 4 or 5 battle tactics each game. They do the current ones really well, so that's a good thing, I guess.
I'm getting told the Eschen one could be easier if thankful to levitate your deceiver before you dreaded skitter leaped in order to jump the screens. And it's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of ifs in that statement. I think for me, the problem with the Eschen one is it means that you're the enemy hero that has to have more than 10 wounds. So in the current meta, how many heroes have more than 10 wounds? And I think unless people are jumping away from Battle Regiment, most people are only taking like 1, so they can kind of reduce those drops. Although Bounty Hunters and Expert Conquerors might change that mix up a little. But the other part is that they can't have had a wound allocated to them already. So you've got to have them on 0 wounds. So it's a very early game, turn 1, maybe turn 2 battle tactic. There's a lot of ifs in that statement.
And the thing I find with my Eschen units is they sprinkle mortal wounds. Obviously, if you focus fire, you can do quite a few. But I like to use them to chip off a support hero, jump up behind something, shoot off a support hero, roll, hope to spike some 6s. So taking out a 10-win hero can be difficult. Your only chance is the deceiver, but again, that can be hard to do. He's
cool.
not super silly.
Moment of truth is your list. People have been asking, what's your list? What's Joel's list? And it is here. So I'm going to read it out really quickly, and you can kind of talk me through as much detail as you want or as little, how this all works. So take what is theirs as the grand strategy, and you've got Indomitable as your triumph. You've got your Vermin Lord Deceiver, which is the general with incredibly agile, the Magnetic Trinket, Flaming Weapon, and Ghost Mist as 2 spells. And you'll notice that he's gone Commanding Entourage and Warlord as well. So you've gotten both an extra spell and an extra artifact, as well as Expert Conquerors and Bounty Hunters. You've just gone all the battalions.
I love battalions.
You've got Grey Seer. You've got 2 Grey Seers. One has Skaven Brew artifact with Skitterleap and Death Frenzy. You've got another one with Skitterleap and Death Frenzy. You've got a Plague Priest with the Curse Universal Prayer. You've got the Underworld's Warband that slinks with Shank with his crew. You got Thankful on Bone Ripper. And this is probably a good. I want to unpack this a little bit because of Thankful, and you've got some customization with Thankful. So I'd love to know why you've gone 2 and 2 as opposed to like 3 and 1 or 4 and 1 of the weapon options. But you have gone 2 Warpfire Braziers and 2 Warpfire Projectors. Also with Skitterleap, also with Death Frenzy. You got yourself 3 units of Clan Rats. You got yourself, obviously, the friends that go with the Slinks. You've got 2 units of Plague Sensor Bearers. You've got Boatman Lockie. You've got Cogs, and you've got Geminids. So that comes in at 1985, 12 drops, 131 wounds, no allies, no reinforcement points. Whew, what on earth is going on here? How does this all work?
That's a mouthful.
I gave you a break. I gave you a break.
Cool. Let's go. So the first thing I'll point out is people say Thankful's got spells. The TO for our event on the weekend it's obviously there's no Skaven facts, so we've got to guess and use a bit of common sense. So Thankful's allowed to have some spells there.
And I think logic will show that was a misstep, and the FAQ will give Thankful back spells, but assume those spells aren't there if your TO are rules as written right now.
They're handy to have. I honestly don't find myself using them a lot of the time. Thankful has +3 to cast, +4 next to a Gnaw hole, so most of the time he's putting out an endless spell and mystic shielding himself. So I don't find it to be the biggest deal. It's handy to have if you can have it. Not the end of the world if we lose it. I've gone 2 and 2 because I find the combo here is with Geminids. Geminids, I'll read it out. Some people might not know what it does. It passes over a unit, or sets up 8, moves 8. Every unit it passes over or finishes within an inch of, you roll a dice on a 2-up, takes a mortal wound. If that mortal wound is not negated, that unit cannot receive or issue commands until the next combat phase. So it shuts down all command abilities in the movement, the shooting phase. So the big ones there is it stops redeploy and it stops unleash hell. So with Thankful, when you're casting Lawcorn, you're moving him up 9 away. You're moving him then in the movement phase to 3 away. A really big redeploy roll there could really hurt your Warpfire projectors. So that's why I really like Geminids with him, and I like to run 2. A lot of people might run 3 or 4 to really make sure you get the mortal wounds. But when you combat that with Geminids, it basically guarantees or gets close to getting all the models in the unit within range. The way the Warpfire projectors work, every model within 8 inches in that, it's only that unit. So you can't have a bunch of other big units around and roll a million dice. So I've got 2, so every 4-up is a mortal wound. So if you got 2, you roll 2 dice for every model, every 4-up's a mortal wound. So if they're 1 wound models, on average dice, the whole unit's gone.
Or in the case of what happened to me last weekend, my Thankful had 4 of the Burdenators, the 4 of the projectors, and it did 44 mortal wounds to my unit of 20 Witch Elves. So it was 80 dice on a 4-up. I was 80 dice because it was 4 of them. My advice to my opponent was, while it worked against me, although ultimately my opponent didn't win the battle, it is playing a risky game, because if you're going to be shooting Thankful into other units and they don't have the hordes that I had in my Witch Elves, then the attacks, you're not getting that many attacks. So I do personally like the split of either 3-1 or 2-2. I think 2-2 is kind of the way I would build it. But if you do see like a horde meta and like zombies and clan rats and spooky ghosts and witch elves and like cities and everyone's hoarding it up, then yeah, you might want to go all 4 projectors.
And you briefly touched on it there. You run into an army that's got no hordes. You're paying 415 points for a guy that's just basically there to cast 2 spells. At least with 2 braziers, like each brazier gives you 2 attacks on 3s, -2/3, which is pretty good. Like, you're not going to complain about that. It's not going to go and kill Archaon, but it gives him that option to go in and do work against some units. He'll take off a support hero. He'll take off a 10-man unit. It gives him a chance. If you charge some Annihilators, he might get 1 or 2 through, and every attack that goes through kills an Annihilator. So it just gives you can use him in a lot more ways. He's a lot more versatile, I find. So that's why I like to have at least a couple of Brazers on there.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, even if you still want to go 3 of the projectors and have 1 brazier, I think having a split force, you'll get a bit more versatility from Thanquol. But hey, you build it the way you want to build it. How's the rest work? What's going on? What are the internal synergies? What are you trying to achieve with this list?
And the other thing with Thanquol, it comes down to play style. I like to be aggressive, so that sort of suits me. This list is a bit of a mini alpha list. That's combined with board control and movement. So I'm going to give away a few of my secrets. So I hope whoever's playing on the weekend isn't listening too closely.
Before you do that, can I just call out one point that we kind of slightly went over that I think is worth calling out? And that is with the boatman. So that endless spell, Lachlan, the boatman, it allows a wizard to move after its move. So that breaks the rules. Traditionally, when you set up and deploy and you that counts as your move. In this particular situation with the endless spell, it allows you to move. So normally when you teleport, you'd be outside of 9, which wouldn't work with Thanquol. You can't pop up from a Gnaw hole and start burninating because you'll be out of range. So the boatman becomes really important because then you can move. Thanquol's got a move of 10. So you can get within 3 and then just burninate as much as possible. So that's where the combination works. I just want to call that out just because I noticed that some people with that endless spell have missed the fact that you can move after you teleport.
Yeah, and I've seen some people say it's a misprint, but the old one specifically said you could not move, and now they specifically changed the wording to you can move. So it might get changed, it might get back, definitely a possibility. It might get changed to, only wizards with 10 less than 10 wounds can use it, something like that, or no mounts. But for the moment, take advantage because it's so much fun combo, so much fun to use. Cool. So yeah, I touched on the Vermin Lord Deceiver before, but I'll quickly touch on it again. Incredible agility, gives it fly, gives it 2 finest hours. So combining with the scurry away, elite disability, can make him super survivable. If he's in a fight, he's doesn't want to be in. You can retreat away instead of fighting, or if you think he can take a hit or you want to send him in with a buff, you can use one of the finest hours as well. With the Magnet Trinket, that gives you fight first once per game. So again, with that scurry away, if you're in a combat and it's not your turn, you can fight first and scurry away. So you can basically guarantee he's going to live another turn, and that's when you've got your 2 finest hours as backup as well. So he's basically there to combo with Slink a lot of the time. The Vermin Lord Deceiver has a War Scroll spell called Dreaded Skitter Leap. Cast on a 6, pick a model or unit wholly within 13, and place it 6 away. So obviously, I'm not sure there's many other things in the game that when you teleport set up again, you can put it within 6 instead of 9. 9 is usually the standard. So it unlocks a lot of combinations or things you shouldn't be able to do. So the option in this list is if you've got something you just want to, buff up some clan rats with Skaven Brew, give them 2 attacks each. You teleport the Plague Priest 6 away. Curse has a range of outside 9. So that obviously gives you access to curse something that you normally wouldn't be able to with a teleport that was far away. A lot of the time I'll teleport the Deceiver in himself. He has a pretty handy shooting attack, so D6 attacks, 3s, neg 1, 2. 6s to hit are 2 mortal wounds as well, which is basically on every Echelon unit, so either 2 or D3 or 1 if on the smaller units. So that can be handy. His attack profile, 6 attacks, 3s, neg 3 ren, 2 damage. He has a command ability for an Eschen unit wholly within 13 to give +1 to hit and wound. And obviously he's got the flaming weapon. So the combo there is goes in, uses his own command ability himself, casts flaming weapon earlier in the turn. He's 2s, neg 3, 3 damage, which is pretty nutty. The other thing I do is I teleport him in 6 away and I cast Geminids. So from him, if it's not going to reach, like I get given the first turn, I can use him to cast Geminids for Thanquol's combo if I want to guarantee units can't move. So Thanquol will get in the range of a bigger part of the unit. So there's, like I said, this guy unlocks so many combos, so versatile, so many things you can do. He's a good choice for general because a battle tactic for general kills something. So he's killy enough that he can go and do that. And I find, 2s, neg 3/3. It's only 6 attacks, but when you're hitting and wounding on 2s, and they need to fail like 3, and then a cool 9 damage. So like there's a pretty good hero, a good chunk of a unit gone. So he does enough for his points, I think. 4 or 5 is a lot, but I love him. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's absolutely brutal. I was just looking at who was in your bounty hunters, and I'm like, no surprise, it's your plague sensor bearers. I'm not trying to skip ahead. I'm like, oh, he's got who's he tapping into? Your Grey Seers, obviously, both of your Grey Seers are really running around as support pieces and buffing. And I love the fact you've got redundancy. It doesn't mean that you've got 2 wizards that can cast Skitter Leap in the same turn. It means that you've got access to great spells, and no matter where you need it and who's in range and what the situation is. You see this a lot in death with necromancers. You'll double up on certain spells just to be able to, if one gets shot off the board, you've still got that critical spell too.
Yeah, I was originally looking at maybe giving one an arcane tome, but I thought this would add more to the list. So this was a late change, and I'm glad I've done it. The thing I love about the Grey Seers is that the 3d6 cast, pick the 2 dice, which can be amazing for getting your cogs out, and then you get to reroll all your other spells. So that's usually the first cast I do is with a Grey Seer. Usually I'll have a nice little party huddled around a Gnaw hole, and then you put a nice little cogs next to it, and then this list has 8 casts, so re-rolling 7 of them and 8 after the turn you've set it up is obviously pretty incredible. And that's really nice combination, obviously, with your Deceiver, because you really want to try and guarantee getting that Skitter Leap off if you can. So getting it on a 6 with a re-roll, 5 on next to a Gnaw hole is pretty good.
By the way, Hannah calling out a good point is that the Deceiver doesn't have the Eschen toxins on the War Scroll. It does do mortal wounds with the Death Star or the Doom Star, but it doesn't have the Eschen toxins like the rest of the kits, which is surprising.
It's very strange. It's like he used all his poison on the throwing stars and didn't realize he didn't put any on his dagger, right? It's got to be for balance reasons, I guess. But it is strange that literally all the little minion dudes can do it on both, and the big boss man only gets it on his shooting attack.
We're in a recession. We don't have enough toxins for the big guy, so it's just like being charitable to the little people.
Toxin stocks. So the 2 Grey Seers are the same. Again, combos on combos. You can one Grey Seer can Skitter Leap the other Grey Seer in range to do Skaven Brew, or he Skitter Leaps the other Grey Seer, who then uses his 3d6 roll on one of the endless spells to get that off. His War Scroll spell Wither can be handy as well on the right target. So that's cast on a 7, range 13. Roll 2d6 if you beat the unit's, I think it's wounds characteristic. It's neg 1 to hit and d3 mortals. So definitely not useless. Definitely has its place. A lot of people, I'm sure, will be looking at Purple Sun, so be able to Skitter Leap a Grey Seer 9 away, and then 3d6 a Purple Sun cast is obviously the obvious one, or Vortex if you like Vortex. So versatile. Again, good battle tactic. Get later in the game with the teleport. You need to take 2 of these guys and Thankful to unlock the Master Clan, but I'm not sad to have to take 2 of them, honestly. That's why there's 2 Grey Seers in the list.
And I mean, they're double casters as well, right? They're double casters, double unbinders. So they're great little options. And I think you made the right call on unlocking double spells, because then you've obviously got Arcane Bolt, you've got Mystic Shield, and then there's 2 spells on top of the endless spells. So I think you've got a good variety. And if you're going to go the double Grey Seer, I do like the option of going extra spell.
The 125 points for 2 casts and a 3d6 on remove the lowest on one of them, and the auto cast on a 13 as well. Can't be unbound is cash money. A lot of people like that.
And then +1 from the Gnaw hole as well. So you're laughing.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah, the Plague Priest I touched on. He's a handy little piece. We got Curse. I also find myself using the Bless generic prayer as well. Obviously, if nothing in range of Curse, you just chuck Bless on something. You're never going to knock back a 6 up ward. Why not? I really like having the option to dispel invocations as well. They're starting to pop up a little bit more between Fire Slayers and Doc. The calm ones aren't great, but you never know. You might see someone running one occasionally. like the Hex Gorgeous Skulls. This list would hate diverse Hex Gorgeous Skulls, so if you can get rid of that, that would be really handy too. So it's good versatile piece. 100 points fills a slot in my battalion. So yeah, why not? I don't mind him.
And as you said, like Daughters of Cain love their Heart of Fury as well. So that's like that's an auto include in doc. So having access to spells and priests as well. And because your Gnaw holes also give you +1 to your prayers as well, it can be quite powerful.
So I was playing a game on Monday and I had him sitting 3 inches away from a Gnaw hole and then with an inch of mystical. So it's +2 to his prayer. It's like, cool, roll a 4 up, I get a great plague, like sweet. So yeah, handy little piece.
Good. Even with just one, right? That's just one. So you've obviously got three units of clan rats, bodies. They're in expert conquerors, so they're counting as 3 on an objective per models. That could be up to 60, which is brutal. Then just a general pain in the ass, right? They heal back up to 3 wounds a turn or 3 models a turn.
If you remember to use it.
Yeah, if you remember to use it. Anything else you use with the clan rats, or are they just like body screens, objectives?
They're just a very versatile piece because you've got retreat and charge and +2 to run. So they can be surprisingly quick. A lot of people get quite surprised when it's like, okay, 8 plus a d6 run. It's like, wait, what? So you can get them in places people might not expect. And yeah, the retreat and charge. You retreat out of a fight they don't want to be in, or use it as extra movement instead of being locked up. So you retreat, you might charge a little support hero, they can't kill them. And they're worth 3 on an objective, so it might help you steal an objective or get to somewhere more important on the board, help create a screen for something else. So they're so versatile. They're a unit that new Skaven players, they won't pick up on all the nuances at first, but if you can really sort of master how you're using your clan rats, it can really push your results and how well you're going to do once you start to use them to their full potential.
Yeah, and like friend of the channel, Dan Brewer, who's been on the channel multiple times with Skaven, he was a master of clan rats and being able to manipulate them with the retreat and charge. Even a unit of like 2 or 3 clan rats, if you wipe out most of the unit, you retreat them, they can kind of go steal objectives, they can block out and deny and zone up the board. And now you get the ability to be able to return models with the seething swarm. So they've just gotten even better. So
the points went down. They got the +1 to save always instead of only with 10 or more models. They get the extra reach now from the allegiance ability, so you can run rusty blades instead of spears. So your 4s and 4s, like clan rats got so much better in this book, and they're already amazing. So
yeah, they've just lost the battle shock immunity. So probably my advice competitively is don't go overkill reinforcing them. Maybe 1 at best, but don't do too many reinforcements in your clan rats. And because a lot of your Skaven models come in quite small areas anyway, you're probably going to spend your reinforcement points elsewhere. Storm Friends, for example. But you've proven here, Joel, you've spent no reinforcement points here. You've just gone pure bodies without reinforcements.
I think a lot of people find my list quite odd, but it's just my playstyle. I love having a couple of big hitty monsters that I can rely to send off and do jobs. So I've got a lot of points in heroes in this list, so there's not really much points left over. But there's so many viable lists in this book. Absolutely, there'll be people that'll use all 4 and wish I had more running big blocks of plague monks or lots of big blobs of sensor bearers. So
who are your threats? Who's dealing damage? So your plague sensor bearers are doing damage. Your Vermin Lord Deceiver's probably doing damage. I mean, obviously everyone can do damage, but and obviously Thankful as well. Are they your damage dealers?
Yeah, there's not like a crazy big hammer unit. Thankful and Deceiver are okay damage, but they're not crazy fulminator damage or anything like that. I like to combine and then target maybe after I've chipped away a little bit. I find the Plague Sensor Bearers, they fill a role. They're in Bounty Hunters. If there's a GV, it's got 20 models. 5 Sensor Bearers will take off 20, for example, 20 Clan Rats. 5 Sensor Bearers will take off 20 of those, no problem with the extra damage. So they're just there to fill that role. I'll send things like Slink, Skittershank, and East Pack, and the Deceiver as a power pair because Slink gets to fight first when he's within an inch of his Skittershanks. So I get 2 picks in a row, sort of like Lumineth. So that's a cool little combination you can put together as well.
Cool. Anything else on this list? I mean, it's a great little list. And again, is this everyone should take this list to their next tournament? No. I don't think there is a list, which is obviously the benefits of Skaven, is that you have so much variety and so many options and what you do with it. I don't think there's a clear winner. But if you have these models, run it. But I think you pointed out as well, it's it's a very unique play style. I think maybe 12 drops might be too many for some people. You might want to, I don't know, like maybe you want to go bounty hunt, battle regiment. Maybe you want to, I don't know.
That's it. Tailor to how you play. Like, this suits how I like to play. I like to use board control movement and then have a couple of big monsters because they're fun to use. And there's a lot of little nuance combos in this that I haven't touched on, but there's a lot to it. But every Skaven list is going to be like that if you want it to be. So it's just combining the things that you like and you enjoy. And the beauty of this book is almost everything. Almost everything works if it suits how you play. Right. There's only a few units that I'd never use. So.
Add more Plague Priests if you want to tap more into the Pestilence. If you add some Storm Fiends or some Giselles or some type of, like, there's just so much option, which is one thing I love. Again, it's the cities piece.
Yeah, and again, with this list, I was limited a little bit by what I owned. So I would have loved to put a couple of tens of Scryer Acolytes or things like that in if I was going to a tournament. Unfortunately, don't own those because I'm not paying. I think it's $22 on the Australian store per model.
You 3D print. You 3D print them.
Yeah, so I've got some off Etsy coming, so hopefully soon I'll be able to have a crack with those guys. But yeah, a little bit limited by what models I got, but I love the list. It's so much fun to play. Give it a go. You do a cool little alpha with your Slink, Skittershanky's pack and Deceiver. You can just, because they all come in 6 away, so it's very hard for your opponent to zone that out, come in behind them and kill something juicy, retreat away with Slink, and then the Deceiver we've talked about is very hard to kill, so it can be a nice little alpha there, especially with Thankful too, and hopefully you do enough and then you control the board with the rest of your units.
I've become a real fan of the Storm Vermin. I think there's a lot of versatility there. They can be killy, but also the bodyguarding, and I really like them. I really do like them. I probably wouldn't go 30, maybe 20, unless you just want to have like the ultimate bodyguard. But I think I've really grown a fan of them.
I mean, the thing with 30, right, obviously the Allegiance ability give an extra inch of range. So even if you want to rubber blob a 30, you're getting them all in most of the time. So it's definitely an option. And then they're only taking the buffs better. But I think, 30 might be a bit overkill. That'll take a lot of stuff off.
Couple of rapid fire questions, and then we'll kind of close this off. First one coming from Flip the Bacon. What do you think the worst matchups for Skaven right now?
I'm not sure on that one. I've only tested what I versed locally. I haven't had much of a chance to see what else is out there. Probably things that do a lot of damage too quickly, I'd say. So maybe something like Iron Jaws might struggle a little bit with it. They can probably punch through you too quickly. I'd probably be worried. Bok's the one that's jumping out in my head. I'd be a little bit worried about Bok. Seraphon, I reckon, probably Seraphon's probably almost the worst matchup, honestly, because they shut down your magic because it's board wide, and you've got damage, but not crazy damage and not high Ren stuff either. So Seraphon would also, I'd say, be a really difficult one. Maybe that's probably the worst one, actually. It'll be Seraphon. But it does really well into some other meta stuff at the moment. Like I'd have no problem running into Doc with that list. So things like that, they're going to become more popular. I'd be happy to play against as well. So
we'll see what happens with this new ruling around the buffs and the weird ruling around. Yeah, I can't remember what the FAQ.
Yeah, that's sort of screwed your list for the moment, hasn't it? Unfortunately, it's very weird.
I'm running Gits this weekend. Don't have to worry about that. Nothing to do with an FAQ. Would you bring Kronspine? Would Kronspine be something that you'd add to this to get a bit of punch?
It definitely gives the army access to something it doesn't have. So absolutely, Kronspine could slot in really nicely with the Skaven list. I'm a bit anti-Kronspine. I've never used one, never will. So I wouldn't be using one personally, but it doesn't have any. This army has no anvils. Kronspine is an anvil, obviously. You can't kill it for a couple of turns and can't retreat. So I think, if you write the right list, it could slot in very nicely into Skaven.
Yeah. And then probably the last question. I got 2 more questions, then we'll wrap it up. One coming from Discord. Manfred had a really good question, and that was around with Galettian veterans and bounty hunters in general. How has that affected Skaven both positively and maybe some things that you're thinking about? Like we talked earlier on when we talk about battle line, we're talking about, maybe you don't want to pick certain units and you don't want to activate them as battle line. Or you mentioned the fact that Rat Ogres and Storm Fiends are battle line, but are not going to be Galettian veterans. So I guess when it comes to this particular season, how has that impacted your build or your thinking around Skaven?
I think it's definitely a positive for Skaven. Like we touched on, if you don't want something to be a Galatian veteran, you just don't make it one. So you avoid the bounty hunters. Clan rats die to anything anyway. Like they're 1 wound on a 5-up save. Their job is to die and to protect your good stuff. So they were dying anyway. So the +1 damage from bounty hunters doesn't affect me. They've got the speed. They've got the retreat and charge. They've got the movement they need to do your extra GV things during a game. So I think clan rats are great Galatian veterans, honestly, however you say that word. So yeah, personally, I think it's just positive to Skaven. If it becomes a negative if you want to run your big storm vermin blocks and you're forced to the GV. There's no choice, or you want to do a 30 blobber plague monks and put all the buffs on them. Then obviously they die, and again they die anyway. But they might have a chance if that wasn't there. But no, I think it's all, for the most part, all positive.
I think for me the consideration would be, if I'm going to run big blocks and I'm going to be using my reinforcement points, how can I get multiple inspiring presence? And I know we've lost the the Screaming Bell.
It's back.
So many things. But like for me, like one of the things that I'd probably do if I was going to run a horde would be to make sure that my list was like 1940, 1950. And I would go for the triumph and get myself an extra battle shock immunity, right? I'd be looking at was it Savage, whatever it was, and get myself that. Yeah, like I'd be looking for those things to increase my battle shock immunity, because if I run a horde, I'm not gonna, and with Galettian veterans, you're gonna do more damage, or my opponent's gonna do more damage to me. I'm just asking for trouble. So if I was gonna go that route, I'd be looking at ways to kind of counter that. But you're right. Like those clan rats are probably already going to die, and it's probably a negative incentive for me to reinforce them. I'm probably better off going multiple units of 20 as opposed to the 40s and the 60s we saw in the past. And yes, Hannah, good comment as well. The Plague Furnace gives you the 13-inch battle shock immunity. So I may drop the Grey Seer on Screaming Bell and bring myself a Plague Furnace. But then if I bring a Plague Furnace, do I need to bring in more Pestilence? Pros and cons, right?
Your other option is you take the warp, the Vermin Lord Warpseer, which gives you 10-inch bravery bubble, and it counts as 2D Master Clan. So that might help cut down your points and save them for other things. If instead of taking a furnace, for example, if you want to unlock the Master Clan buff. So there's a couple of options. Me personally, I don't think it's the meta or the best thing in the book at the moment to be running Skaven hordes. Not like they used to be in the past, I don't think. You can definitely do it, and if I was going to do it, I'd be doing it probably in Verminous. Pestilence can kind of do it, but I'd rather probably run MSU. I think running Big Blobs of Sense of Bearers is a bit overkill. I don't think you need it. Maybe
unless you're building for attrition. Like unless you're building for attrition, right? You take 15. They are quite cheap at 90 points. You assume some of them are going to die from like Unleash Hell or maybe shooting along the way. Maybe.
The thing we didn't mention either is Death Frenzy is when a unit is slain. So it hasn't got the dock treatment yet. FAC is coming, so a bit nervous. But if you do charge something in, it gets Unleashed Hell and dies. You still get to fight whatever you charged. So you can definitely attrition the way. Make sure you definitely get value.
Yeah. And look, again, good comment. We are recording pre-FAQ if you are watching this at a later stage. So some of the things that we might have discussed actually have been updated. So, do check your FAQ to ensure that, we didn't see something that's now incorrect. But I guess it's like any video, right? Literally, they can change any rule at any time. Final question, then I'm going to bed, is what's the key to success when it comes to running Skaven? Like, how do I win my games? Like, what advice would you give to me if I'm a player who's currently going like 1-4 or 2-3? How do I get the most out of my army?
I think Skaven, it's all about your placement. You have to be really on top of your placement, and obviously in combination with that is your movement. Almost everything is reliant on your units being in the right place at the right time, whether that be for spells or buff ranges, or just being in a position where it can't die, or to get to where it needs to be on the following turn. So I'd say you really need to know when to send something in, like when to go and when not to go. You really need to think about whenever you're moving a unit or placing it down, is this the best place and where it should be placed? It's very easy to make a small mistake, and it can be very costly. If you don't get your positioning and your movement correct, it will cost you the game. I guess that can be said for a lot of armies too, but I think especially for Skaven, that's the key to this army, is getting your positioning and your movement right, because that's where the game will be won and lost for you.
A question from the chat. I'll wrap this up because Flip the Bacon's been very interactive, so I'll reward them for their contribution. They're talking about Warplock Jezzails, right? So they're a unit of 3 coming in at 120 points. They're artillery and singles. So correct me if I'm wrong, it just means I can't reinforce them, right? If they're just singles, it means I get 3 Jezzails each time I pick the unit. Because they're singles, I can't reinforce them. So I can take multiple of them. I can take up to 4 units of Jezzails, but I can never grow them from 3 to 6 or to 9. Is that, am I correct?
Yeah, the issue with this one is on the app at the moment, they're not put in as singles. So people are saying, oh, well, this must mean that they're going to FAQ it, so they're not singles anymore. So I think that's causing a bit of confusion. But for the moment, you go by what's in the book, what's in the GHP. They both say single. The app isn't an official source. So yes, they're just singles. You can only take 3 in a unit and 4 artillery slots. But I think that's perfectly fine. If you do the maths on them, they have basically the exact same profile as long strikes. Long strikes can't double shoot now when they're reinforced, so they're basically the same as long strikes, but with twice the wounds.
So with the Jezzail, right? Well, when I get a single means a single unit of 3. It's not 1, it's 3. But because it's a single, I can't reinforce it anyway unless that single thing drops off.
It's a single unit, so a unit comes with three Jezzails. So
yeah, I think like the Bloodthirsty Shivering IDK, for example, they're a unit of 3, but they're single, so you can't reinforce them, even though Alapexes can normally be reinforced. So it's a specific thing to that unit. So I can see where the confusion lies, but it is artillery, so you don't traditionally reinforce artillery anyway. So, but hey, again, FAQ might be clarified, but I appreciate that little sidetrack. Joel, you are incredible. Thank you for a 3-hour stream. We didn't quite make the 4.5 hours that Warhammer Weekly was, but I think we've definitely added to the conversation. And between those 2 streams, I think players should have a better idea of how to start constructing their force. Take what you want. Don't run Joel's list. Find what works for you, whether you want to be going into like hell, you want to run Hell Pit Abominations, you want to run Doom Wheels. We didn't really talk about them much. You do you. Take what works for you and build it into your list. You are on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle for people who want to talk to you and kind of list tech?
Yeah, look, obviously we couldn't go into everything. I would have loved to talk about everything, but like you said, it'd be a 10-hour show. So if you want to talk more about Skaven, hit me up, JC_Graham, GRAHAM. Always happy to talk rats. Yeah, love them. Thanks for having me on, Coach. Much appreciated. Good fun.
Hangfire is mentioning in the non-English version, it doesn't actually say single, so I can see maybe why the Jezzails are not coming up. That's probably where the confusion lies. But thank you so much for everyone who joined the show either live or watched on replay. You're all legends. If you enjoyed it, you know what to do. Hit the button, press like, put a comment in. And I legitimately want to hear from you how you are building your Skaven in the comment section. Let me know what you like, what we didn't cover, what are the synergies. And I think as I was talking to Joel before we went live, this is probably part 1 of many Skaven videos. I think we can break this down a little bit, and there's probably at least an Eschen, a Master Clan, a Scryer, and a Soup type discussion. I think there's going to be many Skaven focuses on the channel moving forward. But Joel, you're getting a lot of love. Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. And I think we should do the outro and now go to bed because I'm an old man. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.